Welcome back to another deadline stream, this time at a Blank Gameweek 34. The free hit is active and there are still a few things to iron out in certain details, but I'll be discussing that throughout this stream and answering all your questions so you're well prepared for this deadline and also for future game weeks. Let's not forget Gameweek 35 and of course a potential double in 36 and another blank in 37, but we are approaching the end game of course, and you'll be well prepared for every single deadline by tuning into this channel. The same goes for UCL Fantasy. The content will return over the weekend and going into Tuesday's deadline where, once again, I will be live. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream for both fantasy formats, and check all the other links in the description for my X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, the Discord server, FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues, as well as Spotify can also be found in the description. And let's get straight into your comments. Cyril starts things off saying, "Hey Dylan, I have a few differentials in mind for free hit as I want to gain rank. Thoughts on Pedro Neto? I'm not too sure about Palmer, but I want a Chelsea player." Well, Pedro Neto has 4 Premier League goals this season, and his goal-scoring record is pretty atrocious for his career. He's a decent player, of course, very good dribbler, and he can provide some assists, but I get your point. You want to go for a differential. He's shown a bit more form than Palmer, you could say, but I still think Cole Palmer is far more efficient with the goals and the assists, even with his current form in mind. And I just would rarely recommend Pedro Neto, but there were a few instances this season against the likes of Leicester and Southampton where I said Pedro Neto could be a very nice differential for those specific game weeks, and I think Everton at home is a decent fixture, but I still would rather go for Cole Palmer, to be honest. Cyril says, currently my 4 free hit team is Pope, Trent, 8 Nuri, Sessegnon, Salah captain, Diaz, Murphy, Kluivert, Neto, Isak, Cunha, benches Areola, Wood, Kirkes, Milenkovic. Yeah, it's a good team. I mean, a lot of ours will be similar, unfortunately, but I'm in a similar boat to you, since you mentioned it here, that you're not sure about Pope and Sessegnon or Leno and Trippier. That is one of the set of changes I've made from my team selection video yesterday, or should I say 2 days ago, but things are not locked in for me. So I've currently gone for Leno and Trippier, but Pope and Sessegnon could easily come back into the fold. But there was one quote by Marco Silva which doesn't fill me with confidence in regards to Sessegnon with Harry Wilson potentially starting. I don't think that will be the case. I think Sessegnon will get the nod, but his minutes will be very insecure to say the least, and I wouldn't be surprised if he got subbed off around 50, 60 minutes, and ultimately you want that 60-plus cameo to get the clean sheet if it's actually in the bank, the appearance point, and then I think Sessegnon can do very well if he starts or gets good minutes against Southampton playing as a right winger potentially, but that quote doesn't fill me with confidence. Easy says my current free hit team right now. So yeah, of course, there will be a few changes here and there between different free hit teams, but the general crux of it is the same. I'm actually considering something similar with Jose Sarr and going a bit different with my goalkeeper, as I actually think Wolves have one of the best chances of a clean sheet this week against Leicester. So I actually don't mind that defensive double up. I'm more warm to it now than I was maybe last week. But yeah, Barnes, I mean, there are some concerns with minutes with certain players like Barnes, but if he does get a good number, I think he can do very well. So yeah, there's a few things that separate yourself from the rest, but ultimately we are covering the same teams. Want it to be a little bit different in the forward line, especially Vissa instead of Raul. Yeah, look, I don't think Vissa's ceiling is that high against Nottingham Forest, but I completely get it. He's shown good form, the same with Brian Mbeumo, but Jimenez has a great record against Fulham. Conversely, his form isn't really quite there yet, so it's a balancing act, and there are a lot of different options in each position, even in the forward line, which seem to be quite dead, you could say, in the last couple of weeks. We now have a bit of variety, you could say, but yeah, ultimately with Vissa, I'm not as keen on him as other people would be. Then focus on Gimmick Phase 6 of the bench boost. Makes sense. I mean, I'm kind of happy I got rid of the bench boost, even though it wasn't a great score. It's kind of a hindrance, in my opinion. Insane Gamer says, I'm so frustrated with Cher being injured when I just bought him, not seen in training as well. Yeah, he was someone that I talked about in my best free hit team video, but he's out of the equation. I'd rather go for Trippier or Nick Pope in goal to cover Newcastle defensively, but in your case, I'm guessing you don't have the free hit active, so that's a little bit different, and it makes it very challenging to navigate this problem. Thank you, Lager. Good morning from Norway. Yes, it is very early here as well, in the UK. On the Saturday, I like to be sleeping in. I bought him for a transfer. Yeah, it's kind of painful, Insane Gamer, but FPL can be like that sometimes, especially with early moves, and I don't really blame you, per se. But yeah, with Cher, I don't think anybody expected him to be, sustaining a serious injury or something that at least rules him out for this weekend. Nicely done, easy. Lager says Leno or Pope. I think in isolation, Nick Pope is slightly better. The thing is, it's also about the defender you choose, and I don't want to double up on Newcastle defensively because I'm already, kind of tempted to go for Jacob Murphy, Barnes, and Isak at the same time. So my current kind of balance is having 2 attackers and 1 defender, and that's why if I do go for the route of Trippier and avoid the Sessegnon minutes concern or Robinson's lack of form, then yeah, I mean, I could just go for Trippier in the defence instead and then cover Fulham defensively with Leno. But it's a difficult one. I think in isolation, Pope is probably the better option, and he was discussed in my best free hit team video and also my team selection. So yeah, Easy, I get why you free hitted. I mean, good players, but a lot of them do blank this week. The GOAT says, who is the best attacker or midfielder to buy from now until the end of the season? Yeah, so someone who features this week and who also has a decent end per se, or at least can do very well. I think Mbeumo. I'm not a big fan of him this week, but he can produce against Nottingham Forest. The same goes for Visser up front, but to kind of look a little bit outside the box and think of other options, I think Murphy and Barnes are good choices, but with Harvey Barnes, there's always the risk of Anthony Gordon coming back in, and whilst I think Barnes will start, I don't think his minutes will be that nailed on. I don't expect him to get 90, to be honest, but those are the sorts of players I'd be looking at in terms of investing in those positions from now until the end of the season. Those are my favourite options, I think. Likely to take a -4 in the next 2 games before blanking in 37. Yeah, if you're only taking a -4 hit and you're covering 2 blank game weeks and a double, that's not too shabby. Of course, you're also using a bench boost in the process. Welcome, Lager, and Zaid as well. And yeah, Punjabi says, good afternoon from India. So good to see people from all over the world. 60 points, but the weeks before have been green, even though my overall season has not been that good. Yeah, last week was quite underwhelming. I'm not really too happy with how it transpired, but yeah, it was the first red arrow in quite a while, so it is what it is, right? Welcome, Jamie. Hopefully you do sort out your team in time. Lager says, I only have 2,120 points total. Yeah, it does seem to be a higher scoring season than most, but it also has been very swingy in certain occasions, but I think FPL has always had that sort of element to it. I don't think Cher will play based on the recent reports, and he has also missed training, according to several sources. Opinions on Cunha captain as a differential. There is a slight concern with the minutes, and with Bellegarde back in the equation, there is a chance that Cunha doesn't start the game. Now, I think he will, but I'm not fully convinced like I would be with Isak or Salah, so that would put me off a little bit. Cunha is still ranked very highly in my captaincy list, as you'll see very soon, and I did make these graphics early in the week, and there might be a little change. So just to put into context, I've also brought in Trippier and Leno for the likes of Pope and Sessegnon. In the midfield, I've actually captained Salah this time over Isak, but that isn't set in stone, and ultimately I will be captaining one of those players before the deadline. And any other changes? Not really. Diaz has come into the starting 11, Kluivert has dropped out, and he's first on the bench. I could see any of that going wrong, to be fair. I mean, on the free hit, if you've got a decent bench as well, you can always have that sort of problem. But yeah, Cunha has always been ranked highly in my captaincy list, but not on the same level as Isak or Salah, who, you know, first and foremost, offer more minutes from the get-go. Ahmed says, hi Dylan, I have no free hit. My squad is Sells, 8 Nuri, Kirkes, Cucurella, Murphy, Salah, Palmer, Isak, Ivanos and Cunha. That's fairly decent. I mean, you can add an 11th player if you wish, but it depends on the context. I mean, do you have a free transfer available? And what kind of money are you working with? But that's a pretty decent team that can compete with a lot of free hitters, in my opinion. Welcome, Gary. Good to see you. Lager says, thoughts about Welbeck as the third forward. I mean, I would rank Chris Wood and Evanesson higher this week, but I think Welbeck, with the fixture in mind and the recent form, is another decent shout. You've also got Visser, so those would ultimately form my top 6 forwards this week, along with Strand Larsen. So there are actually quite a lot of options in that forward line, but I've currently gone for Isak, Raul Jimenez and Cunha, as you can see. But Welbeck is a decent choice, for sure. Cunha y Larsen juntos. Sí, para mí está bien. Yo voy por Raul Jiménez porque Rodrigo Muniz no está disponible, así que para mí Jiménez puede ser muy bien contra Southampton, y tiene un muy buen récord contra los Saints, pero sí, Strand Larsen a veces puede decepcionar, pero tiene buena forma y no me molesta hacer algo diferente con 2 atacantes de Wolves, y para mí Leicester es un equipo malísimo, ya fueron al descenso, así que para mí está bien. Rayan says, how's this for a free hit? So yeah, you've got the double up in the Wolves defence, which separates you a little bit. You've got Sessegnon, who is a minute's concern, but I think he will start. The same goes for Harvey Barnes and Diaz. Trippier, solid choice. So I like your team. There are some risks in there. And Iwobi against Southampton, on paper very good, but he's never scored against the Saints in his career. That's just something worth bearing in mind. I'm not saying he can never score against them. This could be the first time, but I do prefer other midfielders over Iwobi, which includes Cole Palmer, despite his lack of form, Justin Kluivert, and other options I've discussed in my best free hit and wildcard team videos. I think that also includes Jacob Murphy, but since you've got Isak, Barnes, and Trippier, of course I understand why you haven't gone for him. Why Murphy over Barnes? Well, I've had Murphy for a while. In my non-free hit team, he's done very well. But ultimately, both of them have performed to very similar standards, the underlying stats and everything like that. But I also think from a minutes perspective, I think Murphy's a bit more secure. I know he hasn't been getting 90 minutes exactly, but I think Gordon is a bigger risk to Harvey Barnes than he is to Murphy. Now, could Newcastle do something a little bit left field and put Gordon on the right and Barnes on the left? They have done it before, but I think it's more likely that if there was a change in that front line, it would be Gordon in for Barnes, and we could see Harvey Barnes getting a cameo off the bench. But in my opinion, both of them will start, and I think ultimately I'd like to have both of them, but I also want that Newcastle defensive coverage and balancing my attack a little bit, because I think tripling up is putting all your eggs in that one basket, and whilst that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just something I want to kind of manage from a balanced perspective. Well, I prefer Raul Jimenez over Welbeck, which is why I've gone for him right now, but I don't think Welbeck is too far off, to be fair. So yeah, at the moment I've gone for Murphy over Barnes, but there's not much in it. I think if I felt both of them would get similar amount of minutes, and that could be the case, but if I was a bit more convinced about Barnes starting, then it would be very, very close, so maybe I'd lean towards him, but I think I'd lean towards Murphy because of that safety, I'd say, somewhat. Now, it could backfire on me, and it goes the other way, like I just mentioned, and we see Murphy on the bench and an out-of-position Anthony Gordon on the right, but I think Murphy will start. Szoboszlai over Diaz, not for me, but I understand why you're doing that. If he does get a goal, he can get bonus points. I just think Diaz has a higher ceiling than Szoboszlai. I already have Mbuma and Wissa and Murphy. That's fair enough. I mean, I don't think Mbuma and Wissa are great on paper this week, but FPL isn't always played that way, and you can get great returns from a player who has a difficult fixture. Sessegnon or Robinson? Well, Robinson is more secure. He's a safer option, and with Marco Silva's quote about Sessegnon, that has actually put me off him, and that's why I've currently gone for Leno and Trippier, which once again isn't locked in. But I think Sessegnon is worth a punt. It's just, if he gets subbed off for 60, which is a possibility, that would be a major sting. Bowen or Mbeumo? I prefer Bowen this week. Carlos says Sanchez, Aït-Nouri, Trent, Cucurella, Barnes, Murphy, Palmer, Salah, Isak, Cunha, Larson con free hit. Sí, para mí está muy bien. Como dije antes, el doble ataque de Wolves está muy bien, pero obviamente hay otras opciones como Welbeck, Ivan Olsen, Raul Jiménez también. Y tienes Barnes, Murphy y Isak, así que un triple en el ataque de Newcastle. Así que no hay mucha variedad en tu ataque, pero también para mí Wolves y Newcastle pueden hacer muchos goles esta semana, así que no me molesta mucho. Y en el caso de Trent, hay dudas si va a empezar el partido, y si hace eso, va a jugar 60 minutos o más para obtener la baja invicta y todo eso. Siempre hay un riesgo con ese tipo de opción, pero para mí Trent está muy bien y en este momento está en mi equipo, pero para ir más seguro, quizás puedes ir por Virgil van Dijk. KFC Boy says start 2, Sessegnon, Livramento, Evanilson and Diaz. I would favour the attackers here. So Evanilson and Diaz. What about Iwobi or Cunha or Gibbs White? It'd be Cunha. Easy says Isak, Cunha and Raul is the most obvious front three. Yeah, sometimes the obvious one isn't really the best case or the best course of action. But yeah, Jimenez's ownership isn't that high. Not currently, but within free hit teams, he might be more popular, especially with Rodrigo Muniz being ruled out. Pratic says, hi Dylan, do you think going for Cunha and Strand Larson is a good strategy? Well, Carlos just said that in Spanish, and as I mentioned there, it is a good idea, and I think Leicester are worth targeting, but I would maybe prefer a little bit more variety in the attack. That's why, for example, I haven't gone for Murphy, Barnes and Isak simultaneously, which I don't think is a bad idea, but to have both Strand Larson and Cunha and then a triple up in the Newcastle attack, like Carlos talked about, it does maybe point you towards two teams basically and going all in, which can pay off dividends, but that isn't always the case. Why is Newcastle clean sheet odds so high? Ipswich often like to score even when they lose. Well, Newcastle did beat them quite comprehensively last time out. It was 4-0. And Ipswich have also not been at their best, even from a goal-scoring perspective recently. Against Arsenal, for example, they didn't cause any problems. And whilst the red card probably played a huge part in that, I just never got the impression from the get-go that Ipswich would cause problems to the Gunners. And I've also seen that on a few occasions in the last couple of months. I think in the first half of the campaign, maybe a different story. Ipswich always seemed to score, but I don't think that's really been the case recently. Gio Boy says no free hit. Best defender to get this week for the rest of the season. I'm thinking Robertson, Cucurella, or I'm guessing that's going to be Sessegnon or Aït-Nouri. Difficult to say. I'm not a huge fan of Cucurella. He might do well this week, but beyond that, I'm not really an advocate of Chelsea defenders. Probably Robinson, but then again, I don't know who your third defender is since you mentioned him twice. Why Trent and not Sessegnon? Well, they're both minutes risks, but I've got Leno in goal, and I'm not looking to double up on Fulham defensively. I think one is enough, and I mentioned this several times in the stream already. Marco Silva made a quote yesterday about Harry Wilson, and that he's available to start and get good minutes, which puts me off Sessegnon because they'll compete for the same right winger spot. Lager says, yeah, I know. Well, just, why not? Game predictions. I'll do that later. I'll show the graphics very soon. Mbeumo, Elanga, Kluivert, considering the later fixture as well. For this week, I prefer Kluivert. Long-term, Mbeumo is the best midfielder transfer, so it really depends on your strategy. Are you free hitting? Are you buying a player in? So that answers your question. Best assistant manager. Well, we'll refer to the different websites and the predicted points algorithms. So let's go to the different screens here. So you can join the FPL Dylan League. There is a link in the description and also the code, which makes it very easy to join. This is the FDR. So Nottingham Forest are top with Wolves, West Ham, Bournemouth and Man City in the top 5. And yeah, that's all good. If we scroll down to the bottom, Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea and Brighton are in the bottom 5. With predicted points, Salah is top with 8.1. Isak and Palmer complete the podium, with Cunha, Barnes, Raul Jimenez, Strand Larsen, Chris Wood, Diaz and Evanussen completing the top 10. With the assistant manager, Fantasy Football Hub does recommend Thomas Frank, but Eddie Howe and Slot are also right up there, not much separating the top 3. My favourite this week is probably Eddie Howe, but if you want to target the table bonus, I don't think Frank is a bad one. I actually think Brentford could get a result against Nottingham Forest, and that would obviously boost Frank's appeal. Amram and Juric, aka the Southampton manager, are in the top 5, and we've also got Potter, Maresca, Ursula, Pereira, Iriola, Silva, Moyes, Nuno, Postecoglou, McKenna, Van Nistelrooy. That completes the 16 teams that feature this week. Of course, Arsenal, Aston Villa, Crystal Palace and Man City are all blanking. With projected price changes, Trippier, Van Dijk, Sells, Milenkovic, Aït-Nouri and Mbeumo could all go up in price. Of course, for those on the free hit, it doesn't affect your team value unless you've got one of these players in for your normal squad already. As for Mateta, Saka, Marmoush, Munoz, Sarr, Dean, Dubravka, Wan-Bissaka, Quansah, João Pedro, Asensio, Eze, De Bruyne, Saliba and Rodgers, they could all potentially go down in price tonight, but I wouldn't expect all of them to happen at the same time. Let's also take a look at one of the biggest debates this week of Jacob Murphy versus Harvey Barnes, and I've currently gone for Murphy, but the stats are identical. So Murphy has 19 goal contributions this season to Barnes' 14, albeit Murphy has had significantly more minutes. In terms of shots, Barnes has more, even 2 shots more on target, but they are identical. Shots in the box, though, Barnes does lead quite substantially. That is definitely one major advantage he has, but they both have 10 big chances, and whilst Murphy has double the number of big chances created and even more key passes, yeah, even the XG very identical. 5.52 for Barnes compared to Murphy's 5.7, and the expected assist is in Murphy's favour. So essentially what we're seeing here is that Murphy is the more creative force in this Newcastle team, but Barnes, in limited minutes, even off the bench, can get a massive return, and he's got that goal-scoring prowess and the attack positioning. So I think they're both good options in their own right. Their stats are pretty much very, very similar in terms of the goal-scoring, but I've currently gone for Jacob Murphy, and maybe I'll end up going for both, but also be very careful about maybe going all in on certain teams in the attack, for example, and going for Cunha and Strand Larsen, and then Barnes, Murphy and Isak. That could definitely pay off this week, but you also might be missing out on some other teams, and also a bit of variety can do very well. Let's also take a look at my Gameweek 35 squad very briefly, and this will be something I'm not really focused on or worried about now, but after the deadline has passed, I will be looking at ideas to bolster my Gameweek 35 squad. But I've got Raya and Saliba at home to Bournemouth. I've got Milenkovic away to Crystal Palace. Gvardiol facing Wolves at home. The same goes for Marmoush. Mateta facing Nottingham Forest at home. Isak and Murphy facing Brighton away. Of course, Saka completes the Arsenal triple up, but I'm not too convinced about doubling up on the defence in the first place. Salah away to Chelsea, and then Rodgers at home to Fulham. And my bench is fairly decent with Verbruggen at home to Newcastle, 2 Palace players in Sarr and Munoz, and Livramento. But yeah, definitely some ways to improve, especially for double Gameweek 36. And we will find out the teams reaching the FA Cup final, and that means they would blank in 37 and double in 36. So once we get that information over this weekend, I can start having a good idea of the players I want to bring in for Gameweek 36. But you have to be very careful because those same teams will blank in 37. So that could cause some problems there. And whilst I've got a full starting 11 for Blank Gameweek 37, there are still some issues like the triple up of Newcastle facing my 3 Arsenal players. So that is going to be probably a low-scoring affair between those two from an FPL perspective. Let's now go to FPL Challenge very briefly. And before I go back to your questions, I will go through some different screens as well on graphics. For example, the top 10 captaincy options. But for FPL Challenge, I've gone for Jose Sarr and Ait Nouri, so I've gone a bit different to my FPL squad, as Jose Sarr is currently on my bench, and that's another change from my team selection since he is back in the equation now, so I don't expect Bentley to start in Blank Gameweek 34. I've got Salah captain here, Barnes and Isak, so I've kind of varied my team slightly from my FPL counterpart, but even this isn't fully logged in, but I think the vast majority of my focus and also modifications will be definitely placed upon FPL. Let's actually show you the team selection graphics from 2 days ago, so I'll let it play out. If you want detailed commentary, then I'd urge you to watch that team selection video, but this is how I did for double Gameweek 33. The main focus, of course, will be the free hit team, which isn't locked in by any stretch of the imagination, but essentially for double Gameweek 33, my defensive line did fairly well, but still some gripes with it, like Saliba making that mistake for Jean-Philippe Mateta's goal, which did result in a massive return there for Mateta, 10 points. Marmoush as my captain flopped, and I think most of the top captaincy options there didn't do the business. Rodgers got an assist in the first game, but got booked against Man City in the second, and the rest of my midfielders were very disappointing to say the least. And Isak also blanked. My bench was pretty terrible. Of course, just a week ago, in FPL terms, I did bench boost, and that got only 12 points, but this would have been even worse with only 5 between the 4. And I did get a red arrow of around 29,000 places, I think. So not a great week. It was my first red arrow in 11 game weeks. I had great momentum going into double Gameweek 33, but it just didn't really pan out the way I wanted. So only 62 points, and that is essentially all that she wrote for double Gameweek 33. A lot of prices have changed, even Isak the other day to 9.6 million, but it doesn't really affect my team value that you see on the right-hand side of your screen because that has been largely influenced by my free hit squad. So Leno could come in for David Raya, but I'm still looking at Nick Pope, who was in my best free hit team video and also my team selection podcast, but it's more a case of the Fulham defenders that I don't trust as much, especially in the case of Sessegnon and his minutes. So that's why Leno's come in at the moment, and Trippier would cover Newcastle defensively instead of going for a triple up in the attack, but that's something I'm still weighing up here. As for the defenders, I could make a late change to Virgil van Dijk, who does have higher ownership and the expected minutes is more secure. And he also scored against Tottenham in the Carabao Cup in a 4-0 win only a couple of months ago, but Trent does have a good record against Spurs. He got an assist in the reverse fixture in the Premier League earlier this season, a 6-3 win for Liverpool, and I think they'll wrap up the league in style this weekend. So I think going for Trent is still on the agenda, but if not, I think Van Dijk is just a safer pair of hands. But then again, with the rank I'm at, it's worth going for some differentials. Now in the midfield, Cole Palmer is still being considered, and whilst he's not locked in, I think he is still one of the better midfielders for Blank Gameweek 34. And he scored 4 goals against Everton this time last year, but of course the circumstances were very different. And the final highlighted transfer is in the forward position, Matheus Cunha in for Marmoush, and Cunha has gone up in price to 7 million overnight, so a lot of people are bringing him in. He is in fact the most transferred in player at this point of the game week, and that's not going to change anytime soon. But with all of that in mind, this is my Blank Gameweek 34 provisional team, and there are still a few tweaks and modifications, I think, afloat. and a lot to really discuss. But Leno versus Nick Pope, let me know your thoughts in the live chat, and I'm also going to bring out some polls that I put out on my channel over the last couple of days that could also really help you. My defensive line is currently Trent, Trippier, and Aït-Nouri. A midfield of Salah, Diaz, Murphy, and Palmer. But could Harvey Barnes come into the equation? Could I go for Justin Kluivert and start him? Maybe in the forward line go for Strand Larsen instead of Raul Jimenez, or perhaps go for Evanilson, even Welbeck, Visser. We've got a lot of different options in these positions, but I think this is pretty much not settled, but almost locked in. And Chris Wood is another forward option that we should all be considering. As for my bench, I've got the likes of Jose Sarr, Kluivert, Kerkez, and Milenkovic currently, and I would expect a high-scoring bench here this week, which isn't what you want to see, and you don't necessarily need an expensive bench. But Salah's currently my captain. It was on Isak all week, and whilst I could still go back to Isak, that is something I need to weigh up. But Salah's got a great record against Tottenham Hotspur. He got 2 goals and 2 assists in that 6-3 win earlier this season. I believe he's got 15 goals against them in his career, and especially at Anfield, he's only blanked once against Tottenham Hotspur. Isak scored a hat-trick, his only Premier League hat-trick, against Ipswich Town earlier this season, so they're both viable options, and I think they stand out far and above the rest. Cunha is third in my rankings, which you'll see very soon, but the expected minutes might be a slight issue, actually, despite the recent start against Man United. And expected points, of course, I did cover some of them earlier today with the top 10. So Salah is top with 8.1, Isak is second with 7.1, and that is reflected with the captaincy and the vice. But some quite low figures, actually, if you look at... Well, I think Raul Jimenez has gone up from 4.4 to 5.3 expected points now. So Fantasy Football Hub do recommend starting these players, actually. But a few players have had a few changes. I think Aït-Nouri went from 4.5 to 4.4, and you can also compare that by using my team selection video. But let's now go to the game week analysis. I was asked about my predictions, so there might be some surprises in here, but I've gone for Chelsea 1, Everton 0, Brighton 2, West Ham 2, so the likes of Welbeck, Bowen, and I think a few others could do very well from that game. Newcastle 3, Ipswich Town 0, Southampton 1, Fulham 3, Wolves 2, Leicester 0, Bournemouth 2, Man United 1, Liverpool 3, Tottenham 1, and Nottingham Forest 1, Brentford 1. Those are my current predictions, and that could still mean Visser and or Mbeumo, and of course Chris Wood get a goal and maximum bonus points. Of course, in the case of Mbeumo and Visser, maybe one of them gets the goal and the other one gets the assist, but I am actually considering a few tweaks as well, not just with transfers, but also in terms of my structure, doubling up on the Wolves defence and backing a clean sheet against Leicester with Jose Sarr and Aït-Nouri. These things are not completely ruled out. But let's move on to the other graphics with the highlighted player, team weakness, and the heat map. So I'm actually focusing on Ipswich Town here this week, and they haven't been covered too much this season. They do have a clear weakness on their flanks, and what you're going to see here, the blue circles indicate the chances conceded by Ipswich Town this season, and the heat map is actually just Jacob Murphy's heat map in this Premier League campaign, but I think you can create a lot of chances there, and Ipswich Town have a clear weakness on the left side, and Leif Davis is suspended, so they will be going for their second choice left-back option, and I do think Jacob Murphy can fully capitalise. He got 13 points earlier this season against Ipswich Town in a 4-0 victory for Newcastle. But before I go to the top 10 captaincy options, let me discuss the clean sheet odds and also the over 2 goals. So Newcastle are top with a 51% chance of keeping a clean sheet. Wolves are second. You could say joint second with Chelsea, but what separates the two of them in these rankings is the chance of scoring over 2 goals, which is in Wolves' favour. Liverpool complete the top 4 with Fulham and Brighton also up there, and Tottenham are bottom, facing Liverpool away, and they've got an 8% chance of keeping a clean sheet and 9% of scoring over 2 goals. So they are taken by different websites. The clean sheet odds are taken by fantasyfootballpundit.com, and the over 2 goals are taken by DraftHand. But let's now focus on the top 10 captains, and it's probably worth mentioning that there is probably a late change in that number 1 spot. It's between Salah and Isak. I'm kind of deviating between those. These graphics were made early in the week. So Diaz is 10th, Strand Larsen is 9th, and Jimenez is definitely more secure now in this list with Rodrigo Muniz out of the equation. Barnes is 7th, Kluivert and Palmer are just outside that top 4. I do have Murphy in 4th and Barnes in 7th, but that definitely is interchangeable and debatable. Cunha does make the podium, but a few of these players, like Cunha and Harvey Barnes, are slight rotation risks. The same goes for Luis Diaz as well. And Salah versus Isak, let me know your thoughts in the live chat, but I am currently favouring Salah, and that's why I've gone for him as my captain. And I'm also going to bring up these polls I put out on my channel. So this will also help you a lot. I put a captaincy poll out, which can help you, cast your ideas and votes. The best Newcastle triple up, for example. Are you going to go for Sessegnon after the Marco Silva quotes? All of that has been addressed in the last day with these polls. So let's get this show on the road, and I can show you that very quickly. Before delving back into your questions, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. We are getting very close towards 33,000 subscribers. That is our aim by the end of the season, which is almost upon us. Less than a month away there in terms of the Premier League, and the Champions League final will be covered on this channel. The same goes for all the other rounds as well. So I actually put out a lot of polls, so let's get these up and let's see how you voted. So let's start off here with the best goalkeeper for Blank Gameweek 34, and Nick Pope is top with 43%. Leno is second, narrowly behind, and there's a golfing class between those two and the other options posed here. So either Bentley or Jose Sarr, and of course it will likely be Jose Sarr now, facing Leicester, only 10%, and Sells against Brentford also shares that amount. And a lot of the comments did suggest Robert Sanchez, which I do get, and a few other names were suggested, so I think that is all viable. With Fulham, so this is the quote that Marco Silva said, which I did paraphrase earlier. So we could use him, Harry Wilson, from the start or the bench. Sessegnon is playing well. I need to decide, but Harry will be involved. So I then simply asked the question, do you still back Sessegnon to start? And 57% of you said yes, he will still start, but 43% have voted for just go for Robinson instead and save the headache. So that's pretty much what it comes down to. Now, another poll was about Newcastle. So I said choose a third Newcastle player to complement Isak and Murphy. And despite that, 34% have voted for Barnes and tripling up on the attack. 31% went for Trippier. And then Livramento is third and Pope is last. I would rank Pope higher than Livramento, but it is all kind of team dependent. And I do think Livramento is still a decent option this week. As for the other options here and the other polls, which player would you bench out of Jimenez, Diaz, Kluivert and Palmer? 39% went for Kluivert, which is what I've currently gone for, and 31% have gone for the out-of-form Cole Palmer, so very interesting stuff there. Now for the captaincy, Salah is leading it by quite a landslide as well, double the number of votes of Isak, but there is also a big difference between Isak and Cunha for that second spot, with Cunha only getting 10% of the votes, but sometimes the least popular avenues are the best ways to go in Fantasy Premier League. The other option has only 4%. I've seen some people mention Harvey Barnes in the comment section as well, so definitely a bit of variance going on. But Salah and Isak will be captained by the vast majority of people this week, and I don't really blame them. I'm also going in that direction. But let's now go back to my free hit team. I'm actually looking to put one poll out, which was asked about in a few comments and questions earlier, and it's going to be about a specific duo, which maybe doesn't seem too big in the grand scheme of things, but yeah, let's actually go for it. So Leno and Pope. Leno and Trippier. Pope. And then Robinson / Sessegnon. All right, we're going to go for that for now. Pope for sure. Fulham's leaky. Yeah, I do prefer Pope over Leno. I'm not going to lie. It's just, if I were to go for Pope, I'm not going to double up on the Newcastle defence because I'm going for either Murphy or Barnes alongside Isak. And I'm still looking to cover Fulham defensively with a Robinson or Sessegnon for the attacking threat. But yeah, from a clean sheet perspective, I do agree. I think Southampton could score. Start in Mbeumo or Wood? Chris Wood. Diaz or Mbeumo? Diaz this week, Raul. Rajat says, hi Dylan, best goalkeeper pair for this game week and also for double game week 36. For double game week 36, I think Kepa could be a decent option, but the fixtures aren't necessarily great, to be fair. But I'd say Sells. Yeah, I'd say Sells is probably the best of both worlds. He faces Brentford this week at home and then Leicester at home in double game week 36. So yeah, Sells would be my favourite, actually. Diaz, high predicted points and he's getting good minutes. Yeah, the predicted points is 5.2 according to Fantasy Football Hub. He is in my starting 11 right now. I think he's going to do very well. Criminal is either Murphy or Barnes are benched. It's possible, though. I wouldn't rule it out. Even with Murphy, it could be Gordon on the right and Barnes on the left. I don't think that will be the case, but stranger things have happened. El Parcero del Fantasy says Isak. Interesting. Would you captain Evanilson or Welbeck? Evanilson. Sonika says, my dilemma, no free hit. Solanke to Chris Wood, 10 players, or Sarton, Bumo, or Elanga. Worried about minutes being managed for Nottingham Forest. I get that. The thing is, though, both Solanke and Sarr are sellable. So I actually think both transfers are viable. They really are. Now, I do prefer Chris Wood over Mbeumo this week. Longer term, I think it's close. I think they're both part of the best wildcard squad from Gameweek 35 and beyond. But, yeah. I do prefer Chris Wood over Mbeumo this week, despite the FA Cup semi-final probably being a hindrance and also taking a lot of focus and energy away from Nottingham Forest, this week at least. So I get your point, but I'd still favour Chris Wood. Pope and Sessegnon or Leno and Trippier? Well, the poll is going to hopefully answer that question. The community are making their feelings known. The Pope and Robinson route is winning at the moment, or in the case of what you said, Sessegnon, which is also reflected in the poll. Now, that was my original idea, but yeah, I've currently gone a little bit different. Like I said, this isn't locked in. We'll see how it all ends up going. Dylan, should I take out Sessegnon? So I'm not saying Sessegnon won't start or that you have to get rid of him, but all I want to say is that the quote by Marco Silva has definitely put some doubts in my mind, and I don't think Sessegnon was nailed on to begin with, but could I see Sessegnon being subbed off for 60 minutes? Yes, and that obviously is far from ideal for a defender. Salah takes the back page and wins the league at home. You can see it. Yeah, probably. I mean, he has been out of form for a while, and he's got a great record against the Big Six, including Tottenham. And yeah, I think with Liverpool clinching the title this weekend, I think Salah will be a big part of it. Yeah, I mean, I can see it. That's why I've currently gone for him captain. But you've also got a certain Alexander Isak facing one of the worst defences in the Premier League. So it is a close one. I mean, they're both up against poor opposition. But at the moment, I am leaning towards Salah. Yeah, I think so, Punjabi. It's going to be a rapturous atmosphere at Anfield, Premier League clinching game, a very high-scoring game by Liverpool. I've gone for 3-1 Liverpool. I think it could be more than that, to be fair. I've gone a bit modest with my prediction. Sanchez, Aït-Nouri, Sessegnon, Trippier, Salah, Semenyo, Iwobi, Barnes, Isak, captain, Strand Larson and Welbeck. Rate my team and any changes. Yes, it's solid. You've got some differentials in there for sure. A few rotation risks or minutes concerns like Sessegnon, but that doesn't mean they're bad options. I'm a bit unsure about Semenyo and Iwobi, to be honest, but the rest looks very solid. And to be fair, Semenyo did score against United earlier this season, and Iwobi's up against Southampton. He has never scored against them before, but it's a good time to do it for the first time against one of the worst teams of all time in this division. Easy says, I can predict Raul blanking this game with another Fulham player. It's possible. It is possible, but he's got a great record against Southampton, and ultimately, it's going to be very rare for someone with a free hit team or any sort of squad to have every single player in the starting 11 return. It's possible, but very unlikely. Barnes or Murphy and why? Well, I've gone for Murphy because I think he's slightly more nailed on, so to speak. I think if Gordon was to come in, it would be for Harvey Barnes. Now, could Gordon come in on the right? Yes, it's possible, but I think it's more likely that Barnes would make way if Eddie Howe decides that Anthony Gordon deserves a start. Now, for my personal opinion, well, for what it's worth, I think both Barnes and Murphy will start, but I'm more convinced about Murphy's minutes in the grand scheme of things. Diogo says, thoughts on my free hit team? Leno, Robinson, Aït-Nouri, Trippier, Salah captain, Palmer, Diaz, Barnes, Isak, Cunha, Raul. Yeah, standard stuff. I mean, it's really good. I might go a bit different with the Leno and Trippier route, which, of course, I put a poll about it just now. But a lot of these will be 50-50 calls, in my opinion. Do you cover Fulham defensively with Robinson, Sessegnon, or do you go for Leno in goal? Perhaps Trippier or Pope to cover the Newcastle defence. But I'm happy with what you've got, that's for sure. It's a very decent team, to say the least. Now, you've doubled up on Fulham defensively, which is a differential, in my opinion. But if I were to do that, I think Wolves, I'd be more keen on them. I think they've got a better chance of a clean sheet this week, but that's just my opinion. Fulham attacking differential. Well, my favourite attackers are Jimenez and Iwobi. Now, if I actually quickly check Jimenez's ownership, It is 6.5%. Now, it will probably go up substantially before the deadline, but still a relative differential, I think. Maybe not amongst free hit teams, but Jimenez is my favourite. Yeah, Jesus should start in my opinion, and I'm considering starting him myself. What is the chance we'll see double Gameweek 36 with teams like City, Villa, Bournemouth and Spurs having a double? I'm not sure about the exact percentages, but I think they will happen. In terms of those teams specifically, it does depend a lot on the Gameweek 37, what happens in the FA Cup semi-finals, who reaches that FA Cup final, and then blanks in 37. That plays a huge part. But to kind of reference Fantasy Football Hub, they've actually gone for, so Forest versus West Ham, that is projected to have a 17% chance of going into 36 and doubling. For Wolves to face Crystal Palace, 17% chance. So as you can see, some are more likely than others. Of course, those two are very similar. But City versus Bournemouth is projected to have a 43% chance of doubling in 36. So those two teams are quite locked in, you could say. Aston Villa and Tottenham, though, I think is more likely. That's the more likely of any of the teams. So that has a 59% chance based on Tottenham reaching the Europa League semi-finals. And if Aston Villa reach the final, then that will turn into pretty much 90 to 100%, I think. So, yeah. The teams you mentioned are the most likely to double. You're right to point them out. And, yeah, I think Spurs Villa are the most likely at this moment in time. Welcome, Akram. Good to see you. Adamak says, hi, hope all is okay. Miscalculated my AM final week on slot. Had to make 3 further transfers. Sells in for Areola. Saka out, Diaz in. Sa out and Mbeumo in. Mateta for Cunha took a -4. Looks fairly solid. I don't know who you've got in your starting 11 overall, but that could possibly compete with free hit teams, I think. Fulham, when playing weaker teams, have to push up. Southampton have scored 5 in 6 games too. I mean, yeah, it's not a great goal-scoring record for a team, but they have wiped out a lot of clean sheets recently, including Liverpool not so long ago. But, yeah, with Fulham, I think the main appeal would be a punt like Sessegnon. But I'm just a bit concerned about that quote by Marco Silva, and I don't think Sessegnon will get 70-plus minutes. But as long as he can get 60-plus and a decent return, a clean sheet or something like that, then that's not too shabby. But it's not something I can guarantee to anybody, which is why I've currently not gone for him. But people are still voting for him and Robinson in the poll to also compliment Nick Pope, which is very interesting indeed. And to be honest, I don't really blame you. Yep, that's fair enough. Early for Sessegnon. Lucy says, hi Dylan, better captain for this week. Well, I've currently gone for Salah, and I was on Isak pretty much the whole week, but I just think Liverpool wrap up the league in style, and Salah's got a great record against Tottenham, especially at home. But I think Cunha is quite a distance away from the top 2. And he was also a potential minutes risk. I think Bellegarde could come back into that 11. I don't think that will happen, which is why I've got Cunha starting for me. But I would favour Isak and Salah over him, and my current preference is Salah. Hi Dylan, is Raul a differential? Relatively speaking, yes. Amongst free hit teams, he'll be very popular as the third forward, but his ownership is 6.5%, so I'd class that as a small differential. If so, I'll go there. If not, I'll go Welbeck. Oh yeah, out of the two, I think Welbeck is the bigger differential, especially amongst engaged managers, but I think Jimenez is still not a template pick, so to speak. Good to punt on Bruno if on wildcard. Well, the form has dropped a little bit in terms of goal scoring and assisting, but he is by far the best United asset. There's no doubt about that. And I don't think it's a bad punt at all. Should I sell Palmer or have faith in him? Well, he scored 4 goals against Everton this time last year, but the circumstances were completely different. I've currently got Palmer, so that would kind of imply I would suggest, yeah, probably keep him rather than sell. But he's not locked in on my free hit team. Like, I wouldn't have too many qualms about selling him. Of course, the ownership, the EO can definitely go against you if he hauls, but you can't always think about that when you're building an FPL team. Should I double up on Fulham? Defensively, no, not in my opinion. I think having one is enough. Overall, yeah, I don't mind it. Having an attacker, maybe even 2 attackers, is a sound strategy, but not in that defensive line. Why is everyone going for Diaz? Scored a brace against Tottenham earlier this season. Also, a lot of us are expecting Diaz to start and also do very well against the poor defence there. I think there are a lot of good reasons why. The only concern would be the minutes. Not trying to be famous says, what defender should I bring in? I'm going to bring in Cunha for Marmoush. Well, my favourite defender this week is probably Aït-Nouri. But I also like Trent / Van Dijk, Trippier. And then if you want a 1 week punt, you might want to go for Sessegnon, but the minutes are a slight concern. But my favourite is Aït-Nouri this week. Yeah, Preston, I did cover this question earlier in a lot of detail, so I'll also show probably the stats again, because I did highlight both of their stats earlier and they're identical with the goal scoring. But essentially, I think Murphy is a little bit more nailed on. I think Barnes, if there was one player to drop out, it would be him for Anthony Gordon, but it could go either way. Hi, Dylan, should I sell Bellegarde for a -4? Interesting question. It depends who you can go to. If it's one of the midfielders you see on screen, including Justin Kluivert, I'd possibly take the -4 hit. But yeah, Bellegarde could still start. I think it would be Cunha, but Bellegarde was in pretty good form before that injury. Akram says, hi Dylan, why don't you put Jose Sa in your lineup? Well, I did say this before, it is a possibility for me. Now, I might end up just going back to what I talked about in my team selection, which is Nick Pope in goal and Sessegnon or Robinson in my defensive line. And if that's the case, I would favour Pope over Jose Sa. But yeah, I think you're right to point out that Leno versus Jose Sa, you might actually want to favour Jose Sa instead. I think that's a very good point. Amat Diaz versus Iwobi. Both good options. I prefer Diaz, and that's why I've currently gone for him. Iwobi isn't a bad option, but he has never scored against Southampton in his career. I'm not saying he can't score this weekend, or that he's never going to score against Southampton ever, but it's just something worth pointing out. Do I take a -8 hit to replace Mateta with Cunha, replace Kiwior with Aït-Nouri, and Saka with Mbeumo? I have no free hit. I get what you're saying, and I think all of those transfers are solid long-term, especially Mbeumo. I'd probably go for it, but for those looking to take massive hits this week, I'd be slightly careful. I don't anticipate a high-scoring affair. Maybe I'm wrong about that, and those on the free hit do very well, but yeah, I just don't get that impression. Yeah, as I just mentioned, Preston, I wouldn't double up on the Fulham defence. Liverpool differential, Szoboszlai, I guess. I think whoever starts between Gakpo and Jota would be my favourite, but I don't know who that's going to be. I'm more convinced about Diaz, which is why I've gone for him. And of course, Salah is going to start. Choose one from Diaz, McAllister, Szoboszlai. Diaz. Not trying to be famous also says, what defender should I bring in? Yeah, I covered that. So, until the end of the season, no Newcastle players. Maybe this is a different question. Just a similar structure. I like Aït-Nouri for this week, but not necessarily for the rest of the season, per se. So that is an interesting one. Probably Milenkovic. In Double Gameweek 36, he would face Leicester at home, and he could double, by the way, if Forest reached the FA Cup final. Yeah, Milenkovic, I think, is one of the better options. Welbeck or Raul? I prefer Raul Jimenez, but it's close. Very close. The same goes for Evanilson. Best Newcastle defender? Trippier. Andy says, Wood might not make it to the Prem game. There's FA Cup match. So who's the best sub to have as cover? It needs to be a mid. Have Diaz, Salah, and Mbeumo, and playing 4 at the back. Kluivert could be a good option, but I'm not a big fan of him in future game weeks like Arsenal in Game Week 35. But I think this week he could be a very good bench cover if needed. I mean, you could say the same about Elanga, right? So I assume you won't be wanting to go for him. I'd highly recommend a Newcastle option, mate. Barnes or Murphy, and I'd start them this week. There's no chance I'd bench them. How about Neto as a punt? I've never been a big fan of Neto in FPL. His goal scoring speaks for himself. It's very poor. Now, in recent weeks, in the last 10 matches, I think he's got 3 Premier League goals, if I'm not mistaken, which is good for his standards. But as a 1 week punt, I'm not completely against it. I think Chelsea are worth having one attacker, maybe 2 players overall with Cucurella or Robert Sanchez in goal. But yeah, he's all right as a punt. I'm just not a massive fan, and he's quite an unreliable goal scorer. How much of a difference is Tarkowski missing going to make with Palmer? It's difficult to see Palmer turning his form around, but you never know. Well, that's the thing about form. It changes in the blink of an eye. I'm not expecting Palmer to get 4 goals again, like he did against Everton last season, but I think he can get a goal or 2, and if that's the case, he will get bonus points. Even during his rough patches this year, there have been occasions where he gets a yellow card, an assist, and he still gets bonus points. So I think the ceiling is high, but then again, the consistency is lacking with Cole Palmer right now, unfortunately. But Yeah, that could be a difference, I think, with Tarkowski missing out. That is a blow. Now, could Keane come in and do a decent job? He could, but I think a lot of Everton fans over the years will probably voice their concerns about him and think Chelsea have a great chance of winning the game now. But I would back Chelsea to win regardless, irrespective of if Tarkowski's there or not. And maybe instead of 1-0, which I went for Chelsea, it will be a higher scoreline. Wayne Gardner says, have 11 decent players. Not on the free hit. Castagna is a worry, though. Yeah, I don't think Castagna starts, but I wouldn't rule out completely. -4 for Aït-Nouri. I mean, let's say Wolves keep a clean sheet. You gain 2 points from that, unless Aït-Nouri gets a bonus point. I mean, Aït-Nouri's ceiling is very high, and he's my favourite defender for Gameweek 34, but because his upcoming fixtures aren't that great, you've got Man City away on the horizon as well. I'm just less convinced about taking a hit for this defender, so I'd probably say no. But Aït-Nouri is my favourite defender punt for this week. I'm playing 4 defenders, including Trent and Sessegnon. Am I mad? Not necessarily. I think there are plenty of decent options in that defensive line this week, but I don't see myself doing that myself. I'm probably just going to stick with the 4 midfielders and 3 forwards, if not go for a 3-5-2. I think Iwobi is the free hit punt. He seems unpopular, but the numbers back it up. Yeah, like I said, the only downside to that is that he's never scored against Southampton, but he could do it for the first time this weekend, and he's also got assist threat, which I like about him. Dylan, I think Sessegnon will start and play 60 minutes. He has showed a lot of energy and pursuit in that right-back winger position. Yeah, I might end up going back to him, by the way. I'm not saying I'm not going for him. I'm just less convinced and also more concerned after the Marco Silva quote from yesterday. Yeah, Oscar, completely up to you. They're all great options in my top 4. I've currently gone for Salah top, Isak second, but that's interchangeable. I think if you're chasing rank, I think Isak would be a little bit more appealing. His EO should be a little bit lower. And you would go against the Salah template, which is risky, by the way, because he is facing Tottenham. But yeah, they're all great options in their own right. But I would favour Salah at the moment. Very, very close between him and Isak. Welcome, Varnet. Mbeumo, Palmer, Iwobi, pick 1. For this week, it would be Palmer. Long term, I think Mbeumo is the best one, which is why I highlighted him in my best wildcard team video. I wouldn't go for Palmer on that chip. But for this week specifically, I've gone for Palmer myself, and I think he is the best of the 3. I'm scared of Vardy and his Red Bulls. Fair enough. I mean, Leicester have been very poor in front of goal all season, especially under Ruud van Nistelrooy. But yeah, Vardy, of course, confirmed he's leaving Leicester. Could he have a few more goals before the end of his career? With the Foxes, it's possible. Welcome, Ilko. And thank you, Punjabi, for moderating the chat. Semenyo or Mbeumo or Bruno on the wildcard? Mbeumo. Pema says, hi, Dylan, who to start? Well, I've gone for Murphy, but if you got both of them, start both. 100%. In terms of who you should buy, that's a more difficult question, but I would lean towards Murphy. I just think longer term, Barnes competes with Gordon for that left wing spot, and whilst we could see a shift and maybe Gordon goes to the right, we saw that earlier this season, I still think Murphy is a bit more nailed on in that team. Bradley to Trent or Virgil from -4? Neither. I don't think it's worth taking a hit. And Trent, by the way, is a bit of a risk. I'm going for him as a free hit punt, and maybe I'll end up changing it, but I think it's more likely that I end up going for Trent than not. I just don't think he's worth a hit, though. I did cover your question earlier, Micah, so I'm not going to go through that again. Hopefully you do appreciate that. Leno or Sells? Leno this week. Captain Salah, Barnes, Isak, why? As I just mentioned before, Salah for me, facing Tottenham. Poor defence. He's got a great record against them. Let me check something, by the way. Don't want to have the stream crash on me. Okay, no, it's all good. But yeah, Salah also has the midfielder advantage over Isak, for example. He got 2 goals and 2 assists against Tottenham earlier this season. In the Carabao Cup, he got a goal and an assist. And I'm expecting Liverpool to batter Tottenham and get a massive scoreline there. Yep, this is a free hit team, Mohsin. As a Villa fan, we are really pushing for the FA Cup and we'll put everything into it. Yeah. I mean, I still think someone like Rodgers is worth going for double Gameweek 36. I've already got him, but he can be quite frustrating. Thoughts on Trent's minutes? A bit like Sessegnon, I would back both of them to get 60 plus, but if you've got both of them and you've got Harvey Barnes and Diaz and a few other rotation risks, it is obviously going to be high ceiling, but also you've got that high risk involved there with all of those players at the same time. But I do think Trent gets 60 plus. And then Bradley comes in for the final, half an hour, 25 minutes. Yeah, Vissa could score against Forest even if they weren't tired or they didn't have the FA Cup game. But that's something that the likes of Palace and Forest will need to get used to, playing every 2 or 3 days when you're in European competitions, or if they reach that stage. By Cunha or Wood, I prefer Cunha this week, but longer term, I think Forest have better fixtures, and they're also the better team, of course. But yeah, if I'm buying one this week, it's going to be Cunha. Hard captaincy choice this week. Wow, taking a chance on a Saturday player, Cole Palmer. Hopefully it goes well for you, and that could be a massive differential, actually. Who would have thought that at the beginning of this season, or this time last year when he scored 4 goals against Everton? Is Murphy safer than Barnes? I think he's slightly safer. Like I mentioned just now, I think in that left winger spot, it's more likely that Barnes makes way for Gordon, either as a starter or when he's being subbed off. Now, yeah, Murphy doesn't get 90 minutes. I've never said that myself, but I think both of them are quite similar with the minutes and also in terms of the goal-scoring chances, and especially when you look at the overall package. Now, Murphy is cheaper, he's got more creativity, but I just think with Harvey Barnes, he can make an impact off the bench. That's the good thing about him over Jacob Murphy, but at the same time, that also plays a part into why he actually does have that role in the team as the kind of secondary left winger after Anthony Gordon. But I think he's currently first choice. I think he will start, but I just think Murphy, longer term, is probably a safer pick in the grand scheme of things because you've got Anthony Gordon knocking on the door. Yeah, Andy, I did cover this earlier. Dog Bead Win says, I have 5 players blanking and I only have the wild card. Should I wild card now or wait for Gameweek 35? That is a good question. I'd probably wildcard now and try to find a balance for Blank Gameweek 34 and 37, as well as 36. The downside to it is you won't have the information in terms of the FA Cup finalists, the teams blanking in 37, and then the consequence that will have on the double. But check out my wildcard video because I covered all the scenarios there for those without the free hit, those with it, and also those using the bench boost. John says, really tempted by the Barnes, Murphy, Isak triple attack, but the words eggs and basket come to mind. Yeah, good point. But free hits are a bit of fun, a one-off, I suppose. Well, that's the thing, you know, with a free hit, I would always encourage people to be a bit adventurous if you can, but also be very mindful about having a lot of rotation risks or, you know, having a trip up in the Newcastle attack and then having Cunha and Strand Larsen up front, because essentially you'll have 5 players from 2 teams in those attacking areas. Yeah, Bowen's a good option. I think a bit underrated this week. He's got a decent record against Brighton. I could see him scoring, actually, against the Seagulls. Yeah, I think if Diaz wasn't facing Tottenham this week, I'd be very tempted to go for Bowen in that midfield. Let's see what else we can get. I've got Livramento, Burn, 8 Nuri, Sal and Isak starting as well, says Adamak. Yeah, pretty good. Hi Dylan, if you still have the assistant managership available, what time do you recommend playing it? I'd stick with 35 or 36, but also bear in mind, if you have any other chips remaining, that will cause a clash and you can't use them simultaneously because the AM will be available for free game weeks once you activate it. But yeah, assuming you've got no other chips, I'd say game week 35 or 36. ANWR says, hi Dylan, this has been my worst FPL season ever. Same here. I want to take at least 3 high-risk differentials on this free hit to try and mend my rank. What player should I consider? Yeah, I'd say Barnes, Sessegnon, and another risk, another differential. Maybe Trent. I think Trent is a decent one. Maybe you're kind of looking at the forwards and midfielders. I get that. I think Strand Larsen would be up there as well. Better TV, Severance or Slow Horses? Wow, great question. I'm just going to be honest. I haven't seen Slow Horses yet, but I've heard good things. I have seen Severance, and it's a good show. So I can't really judge on that. But if you do have another TV question, I'm happy to answer it, especially after the deadline. So yeah, Marlon, try not to, you know, repeat the same thing. Yeah, come on. Let's not make things hostile. Trent feels overrated this week. Do you not think Spurs score? Well, I have gone for 3-1 Liverpool, but Trent did get an assist last time out against Tottenham. Maybe he's a bit overrated. You might be right, but I also look at the other defenders. I mean, Cucurella, Kirkes is on my bench, Milenkovic. Other Newcastle defenders, I'm not looking to go for a double up there. I think 1 is enough. maybe Wolves could be worth it, or in fact, I'd go for Sessegnon or Robinson, and then I can go for Jose Sa in goal. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. But I think Liverpool can batter Tottenham and also keep a clean sheet. It is possible. It was 4-0 in the Carabao Cup last time out as well. Yeah, I think Barnes will play. Just to make it very clear, I think he will start, but I do think Gordon is a bigger risk to him than Jacob Murphy. Welcome, Maria R. Hope you're well. Do I use my wildcard or my free hit this week? Free hit. Then you can wildcard in 35 and set your team up for a potential, well, maybe you don't have a bench boost, but you could set your team up for double Gameweek 36 and Blank Gameweek 37 and have a solid platform for the remaining game weeks you've got there. Would you captain Salah or Diaz based on form right now? Well, based on form, it's Diaz, but I'd still go for Salah all day long. Vissa or Wood for Mateta? I still prefer Chris Wood over the two, especially longer term. Howson or Cucurella? It's a close one. I'd favour Cucurella out of the two this week, I think. Now, I've got Kirkers in my squad for the attacking threat, mainly from open play, but Howson, still a decent choice, but I think United do score. Welcome, FPL Kevy, and good luck to you as well. Fun game week with a lot of differentials in my team due to blanks. Let me know who they are. Maybe you don't want to do that because you don't want people to copy, but I get it. It does seem like a lot of free hit teams are similar, especially with the structure, but yeah, if you do have a few differentials and high-risk players, then obviously it will be very rewarding and satisfying if it pays off. Yet Trent is a slight doubt in terms of minutes. He might not even start the game. But I think he does get 60-plus minutes. And Cucurella, Livramento, who to start? It'd be Livramento. Now, I've actually backed Chelsea and Newcastle to keep a clean sheet. And with those predictions, maybe, you know, in my own case, I can go for Cucurella or Sanchez in goal. But I've also backed Newcastle to do it. So, yeah, Livramento for me. Best goalkeeper apart from Leno and Pope, as I don't want to double up on defenders, I'd say Jose Sa. But if you don't want to double up, then Robert Sanchez, I guess. I'm on free hit, and my questions are JSL or Cunha? Cunha, Sessegnon or Robinson? I'm still, I don't know why, leaning towards Sessegnon as a one-week punt playing as a right winger, but Harry Wilson will take minutes off him, and as long as it's not more than 30 minutes and it means Sessegnon is subbed off before 60, that's not too shabby. Barnes or Murphy? I've currently gone for Murphy. Because all these players I have look vulnerable to the bench. That is true. And that's the problem with the Newcastle midfielders this week. And I've seen some people discuss, you know, going for Pope, Trippier, and then Isak up front, which isn't a bad idea. Double Wolves defence or spread defenders over teams for safer clean sheet odds. Well, I've currently gone for the spread, but I'm getting more tempted by the double up in the Wolves defence. And they actually battered Leicester earlier this season with the same managers involved. Vitor Pereira, it was one of his first games in charge, I believe. Might have been his first. But yeah, my current preference is spreading it around a little bit. So having, let's say, Pope in goal, Sessegnon, Trent, and Aït-Nouri. Barnes, Murphy, and Gordon will all share minutes, and one will haul. Maybe you're right, Andy. Maybe you're right. Hi, Dylan. Thoughts on doubling up on Cunha and Strand Larsen? Yeah, so this has been covered before in Spanish and English, so just to kind of reiterate, I think it's a good idea, but you've also got a lot of options in that forward line like Jimenez, Vissa, Evanosson, Welbeck. So it's a very close score between them. So yeah, Isaac, I did also highlight this before. Marcus Silva he made a quote yesterday, which wasn't very encouraging. He said that Harry Wilson could get good minutes, and obviously they're competing for the same spot on the right-hand side with Sessegnon. But I think with his recent form in mind, Sessegnon will start. But it's not a guarantee, and even if he does, there is a chance he does get subbed up before 60 minutes, as I talked about before. Choose two on the free hit. It would be Jimenez and Kluivert. Why not Mitoma as a master differential? Because you can't have them all, Ansari. I think Mitoma's a decent choice. I've gone for 2-2 in that game, so I'm backing a lot of goals there. But with Brighton, the goals can be shared, especially without Joao Pedro, who can be a talismanic figure for them. But Mitoma has decent numbers this season. In fact, his goal scoring has been better than any other campaign before, but he's not exactly the most prolific of goal scorers, and he's not like a Justin Kluivert or Mbeumo, for example, who just get, 10 plus goals, and especially in the case of Mbeumo, he does it very consistently. Yeah, I get that easy, but I've still got Cole Palmer right now. 1Z Celsius says Trent House and Bowen Wood. Which two do I start? I'd go for Bowen and Chris Wood. Interesting. I don't really blame you for that. ANWR says, yeah, those are the ones I was thinking of. Also, Isak captain, but I might go even crazier on captaincy choice. Thanks, Dylan. Yeah, I've been on Isak all week. I have gone for Salah at the moment, but really a coin toss between those two. I'm more concerned about my final picks on the free hit. Who scores the winner in the UCL final? Feel like Zinchenko. If Arsenal reach that stage, yeah. One step at a time. Maybe Kai Havertz before the end of the season does it again. Who knows? Elanga start over Iwobi. I'd go for Iwobi, I think, from the two. Now, Elanga actually scored against Brentford earlier this season. And he's been in good form in general before the injury, but I would favour Iwobi here. Welcome, Weiseng. Preston says Cucurella or Sessegnon. I think Cucurella has a better chance of a clean sheet, to be fair. Not by much, though. And then you've got the attacking threat, which Sessegnon definitely leads in. So that's a very tough call. I would favour Sessegnon. Should I sell Saka for Mbeumo? I think so. I mean, Saka faces Bournemouth at home, Liverpool away, Newcastle at home. Then it's Southampton away, but the fixtures are quite mixed bag for Arsenal, to say the least. I prefer Clive at Geotip for this week. Longer term, it's a different story. I think Mbeumo is the best transfer long term. Yeah, exactly that easy. You know, Sean Dyche in the dugout, Pochettino. Chelsea ended that season strongly for the most part, and Palmer was on fire. So things do change in football. Alisson or Trent? Trent for me. Bowen or Mbeumo? Bowen this week. Long-term Mbeumo is my favourite midfielder, arguably, behind Salah. Who is winning El Clasico today? Well, I think Barcelona are probably the better team, but sometimes the better team doesn't win, especially in a one-off game like the final. I'll say Barcelona. Yeah, why not Iwobi? He's never scored against Southampton. But it's more a case that there are other midfielders that I want to cover instead. What are you thinking? Jota over Diaz and Barnes over Murphy? Not for me. I think I'm more concerned about Jota or Gakpo starting. I think they'll compete for the same spot and Diaz gets the nod. Now that could end up backfiring and we see Diaz benched. It's possible, but I think less likely. Yeah, Barnes over Murphy, look, I'm seeing a lot of people kind of going that direction. Fair enough. You can go there if you want. And I don't think there's a massive difference between the two. But sometimes you get these 50-50 calls and it does seem very close and then it ends up being a massive swing. We do get that in FPL quite typically, especially in a game like this with the free hit. But I just think Murphy is a little bit more secure in terms of that Anthony Gordon threat. That's pretty much the main reason why both of them aren't going to get 90 minutes. Bread Game says, would you bring in Cunha for Mateta or Mbeumo for Sarr? I prefer Cunha this week. He is a bigger risk. With Mbeumo, there's no such risk involved. He's going to start every single game. He's on penalties. But if I'm buying one now, it's going to be Matheus Cunha. I have only 10 players this week because I do not want to take a -8. I get that. I would also try to avoid massive hits if possible. Richard says, glad the AM is over for me. Keeping Glasner in 33 for 15 points worked out, as a -4 to Arteta would have been worse. Shane Palace failed so badly in 32. Yeah, I mean, you could probably thank Arsenal for that and the way they rotated and played, because that was one of the worst performances this season. But Palace deserved probably the win, I'd say. And they had 4 big chances, which is very difficult to achieve, even against, you know, a rotated Arsenal side at the Emirates. Y Owl says, my team is Leno, Trippier, Nuri, Sessegnon, Salah, Murphy, Palmer, Mbeumo, Iwobi, Cunha, and Isak with a bench of Areola, Strand Larsen, Cucurella, Milenkovic. Yeah, good team. Of course, there could be bench points. That's something you can't really help. I'd probably start Strand Larsen over Mbeumo. And possibly Iwobi is another one that I'd drop for Strand Larsen. But with your defence, I mean, could you start Cucurella? Perhaps. I'm not a big fan of doubling up on the Fulham defence, personally. Once again, with these kind of why not this player, why not that? Because you can only pick 5 midfielders, and I just don't think Mbeumo has as high of a ceiling this week against a Forest defence that's usually quite sturdy. I know they're going to be quite distracted and they could have a lot of energy and focus zapped out from the FA Cup semi-final, but I prefer these 4 midfielders that you see on screen and also Clive on the bench. There's a lot of midfielders to choose from and you just can't have them all. My free-hit team was so set that I had to refresh. Fair enough, enjoy it. Paredes, good to see you. So what's the move going Palmer? Are you believing a brace is on the way? Well, it's just the capability of the player, and Palmer only needs a goal to get bonus points and a double-digit haul. He also got 4 goals against Everton last season at Stamford Bridge, also in April. Of course, different circumstances with the managers being different. Chelsea were on form, Palmer was on fire, but I just think Palmer can score in this game. And yes, I get your concerns about him. He's not exactly locked in. I've said that all week long. And I'm not expecting a brace necessarily, but I wouldn't rule it out. Leno versus Pope, I think in isolation it's going to be Nick Pope, especially in your case since you're starting Sessegnon. I'm not a big fan on that double up in the Fulham defence. Yeah, no Liverpool defenders, fair enough. I mean, I've gone for 3-1 Liverpool, so it's not exactly a terrible idea from my perspective. Morning flu. Well, hopefully you can recover, Twisted Parky. I did feel a little bit odd waking up today. My voice is a little bit croaky, I think, but it is what it is, right? Well, Clive is on my bench, Way saying, and he was actually in my 11 in my team selection a couple of days ago. Semenyo, he's hit or miss though, isn't he? I mean, very inconsistent, difficult to predict. Not really an FPL favourite of mine, let's put it that way. Jeremy says, Dylan, should I start better or leave him as my first sub? I'd probably leave him as a sub if you can, but it depends who is the other player in question. Jota over Diaz. It's possible that Jota starts. I think it's between him and Gakpo. I think Diaz will start personally, although never say never. Could he be benched? I wouldn't rule it out, but I think Jota is a massive risk. On the free hit, I always encourage people to be a bit bold and adventurous if possible. So I don't mind the Jota pick, but I would favour Diaz in general. Clive or Murphy? I've gone for Murphy. Simon says, thoughts on Trippier versus Cucurella? Feel like both have a similar chance of a clean sheet, and Cucurella will play very advanced with Reece James on the pitch. I still prefer Trippier. If I were to rank their clean sheet odds myself, it would be Newcastle higher, and that's also reflected in the clean sheet odds, which I'll show you right now. So let's go here. So Newcastle have a 51% chance of a clean sheet. Chelsea are third, technically joint second with the clean sheet odds, with 43%. But yeah, I get your point. I think both teams will keep a clean sheet, and that's why I might even go for a Chelsea defender or Sanchez and goal in the end. But I think Trippier still has that higher ceiling, and I think Newcastle have a better chance of winning that game and keeping things kind of standard and professional than Chelsea, who can be very inconsistent. Like, would it completely surprise me if Chelsea dropped points against Everton? Not really. Thoughts on going with 3 Newcastle attackers and no defenders? It's a viable strategy. I'd just be a bit cautious and conscious about having too many double and triple ups in the attack like Wolves and then Newcastle simultaneously. But my favourite way of doing it is having 2 attackers and 1 defender or Nick Pope in goal. No leaks at the moment, Christian. There is a bit of love for Bowen on the free hit, but once again, I just can't cover them all. It's impossible to have all these great players and good options this week when you only have 5 midfielders to choose from and 3 forwards. But he is in consideration, definitely. He'd be higher than Mbeumo and Bruno for sure. But I think if I were to bring in Bowen, it'd be for Cole Palmer, I think, or Justin Kluivert. Double Walls defence, I'm considering it. Jose Sarr in goal and 8 Nuri is the best way to go. Richard says, I think Palmer is worth it on the free hit, as most managers will have enough money without sacrificing elsewhere in the squad, especially as you only need a strong starting 11 and cheaper playing bench players. I agree, but then it just comes down to, can Palmer deliver on the day? We'll see how he does this weekend, but he has been very poor in the last couple of months from an FPL perspective. Palmer or Diaz budget is not an issue. Well, in my captaincy rankings, which I'll show you now, Palmer is 5th and Diaz is 10th, but that is certainly debatable, and I do think Diaz could arguably be higher, to be quite honest with you. And by the way, just for those that are wondering, I would probably put Salah top now over Isak because these graphics were made a couple of days ago when I was on the Isak captaincy train, and I might end up going back there, but that isn't currently what I've gone for. But yeah, it would be Palmer or Diaz. I'm still going to lean towards Palmer. Welbeck or Raul Jimenez? I've gone for Jimenez. Pope and Diaz for -8, or have 2 players blank. Who are you selling though? I mean, I know you're selling blank Gameweek players, but they might be quite useful in the long term. I'd probably avoid the -8, especially for a goalkeeper. I don't think a hit is worth it in that position. Shreya says, hi Dylan, Wood or Raul? Long term is Chris Wood. So it all depends on the context of your question. If it's a free hit, I'm going to say Raul Jimenez right now. Bowen or Mbumo? So with the assumption that it's a free hit question, I'm going to say Bowen and Sessegnon. Wolves and Chelsea might give up 7 each, but this is the game we play. Nah, surely not. They might concede a goal, yeah, but they're not going to concede that many. Sarabia is a differential. I'm not against it. Now, he scored a great free kick against Man United recently. He is quite inconsistent, though, and my main concern with him, and why I've never really recommended him in FPL, is because of the minutes. He can come off the bench and make an impact, but I'd rather have players who get 60, 70-plus minutes consistently, and Sarabia isn't one of those players, unfortunately. So I'd rather go elsewhere with Justin Kluivert, even Alanga, who could be a concern this weekend, but generally speaking, I think he's a good option. Murphy and Barnes, I think, will both get good minutes, and I think they also are a bit more consistent. They play in a better team, and they get more attacking returns on a regular basis than Sarabia. You've also got Mbumo, who's just Mr. Consistent, Jarrod Bowen. So I think all of those would be ranked higher than Sarabia, not to mention Palmer, Salah, and the kind of standard options there. Who to start, Kluivert or Palmer? Well, I've gone for Palmer and Trent in my team, so that will be the answer to your questions, but yeah. Seller says, can see West Ham getting hammered today. That would be mint. I mean, I don't really care, to be fair. The thing with Brighton is they're quite inconsistent. I've gone for 2-2. I think it will be a high-scoring game. Maybe you're right, and it's a battering, but I have a different opinion. Chase says, Sarr to Mbumo or Mateta to Wood Cunha. I'm looking for a long-term option. Then Sarr to Mbumo. Not a big fan of it this week, but long-term, it's a great move. Chelsea early kickoff, a disaster coming. Well, I'm not captaining Palmer anyway, but yeah, he's in my team. Probably will stay there. And I am tempted by a defender or Sanchez in goal, but we'll see how that ends up playing out. Doing some planning would end up with Gameweek 38 with a minus 12 and 11 million in the bank. Yeah, just be a bit careful about taking massive hits. I know you might be spreading the minus 12 over the weeks, which is fair enough, but I think in a lot of cases the hits could be nerfed a little bit and toned down. Captain Calfridge says Kepa, Cucurella, Aït-Nouri, Livramento, and Mbumo, Diaz, Barnes, Salah captain, Ivanos, Cunha, Isak. I like the look of that team. I mean, you could debate certain things like, is Bournemouth better to cover defensively with Kirkes than Kepa? The same with Pope over Livramento or Trippier. But on the whole, it's a very solid team. Mohammed says, should I bring in Alanga in place of Rodgers for a minus 4? Not for me. And I think Alanga could have his minutes managed this week, especially with the FA Cup semi-final this weekend. Would you go for Raul or Welbeck? As covered several times before, I would go for Jimenez over Welbeck, but they're both good choices. I don't see much separating them in the grand scheme of things. I'd probably start Kirkes over James, but not a massive difference there, Organ. Well, Gameweek 36, Juan Perez, would be a double Gameweek potentially. The most likely teams to double there would be Aston Villa, Bournemouth, Man City and Spurs. Bread Game says, I just can't decide whether to bring in Mbumo for Sarr or Cunha for Mateta. I just feel Cunha has another large hole in him. Well, Mbumo is the better option longer term. But this week only, I'd favour Cunha. So it really depends how you want to tackle it. I know you might want to have both of them at the same time. I just think Mbumo is the better long-term transfer. And I'd rather keep Mateta than Sarr as well. Weiseng says, April is an absolute disaster. Sold Garassi to Mbappe. Sold Barnes for Murphy. Gay on the wild card. Dodge Marmoush, KDB from Hauling, just 2. Got 2 points from Saka and 2 points as captain. Yeah, it hasn't been great as well. I got a red arrow in UCL Fantasy, which I'll talk about very soon. Not a massive red arrow. I think it was only 100 places, a few hundred places or something like that. But still, not what you want to see. And yeah, FPL has been good on the whole for me, but double Gameweek 33 was a massive, massive letdown. Baked016 says, good morning, no free available. To get 10 players, need to take a minus 4. Saka to Palmer or Sarr to Kluivert, Elanga, Bowen, Diaz. I still like Saka after Gameweek 34. But if I were to make a transfer this week, it'd still be Saka to Palmer, I think, out of those moves that you mentioned. I think Konate is decent on the wild card. I don't think Liverpool's fixtures are amazing, but a clean sheet this weekend is definitely possible. All right, let's now go back to Let's see. I'm going to show you my predictions one more time. And I might go back to this, after the deadline is closed and we talk about predictions and FPL challenge, but that might give you a little insight into my thinking and why I provided certain answers. But I am expecting clean sheets at the moment for Chelsea, Wolves, Newcastle. I'm more convinced about Wolves and Newcastle. They're my kind of top 2 picks for a clean sheet this week. I think Chelsea will be third. Of course, I referenced the clean sheet odds and all of that just a few minutes ago, so feel free to rewind, refresh, and you can go back to the live point earlier or later on in this stream. But yeah, top 10 captains as well, also covered. Jacob Murphy was highlighted as one of the best one-week punts, so to speak, and players to really target against Ipswich Town. And yeah, let's actually go now to my FPL team. As things stand, there could be a few late modifications, and a lot of you have voted in the poll. 60% have gone for Pope and Robinson/Sessegnon. Very interesting. That's what I went for on my team selection video only a few days ago, and I might end up going back in that sort of direction. So we do have over 200 people watching, so thank you very much. Let's get the stream up to 200 plus likes by the end. That would be greatly appreciated. It costs nothing and also pushes us up the algorithm. Check all the links in the description for my X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Dylan RCM for FPL updates, UCL Fantasy, and all of that jazz. The Discord server, FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues, Spotify, all of that can be found in the description. The same goes for my Patreon and the Championship, so thank you very much. And just in case people aren't aware, let's actually make it clear in the title that I am activating the free hit. So, free hit active, yes. So let me know if you also want to see a reaction stream tonight, and that could be headed your way as well. We only have half an hour until the deadline, so let's be sure to lock in our teams as soon as possible. And that might be a message more so to myself, since I like to answer questions and stuff like that until the last few seconds and then leave things to chance. So let's go for a few more. Then I'll be focusing on my team for a little bit and hopefully sort things out very quickly. So I've currently gone for Murphy over Barnes, but it's very close, Ivan. Yeah, the deadline is in 30 minutes. Yeah, you basically can see with the countdown. Would you start Trent? Well, I've currently done that myself, but it is a slight risk. I'm not going to deny it. I had a dream. I got 1,260 points this game week. FPL has entered my subconscious. Yeah, unfortunately, I hate to say it, it's not going to happen, but maybe you get 126 points, which is also quite unlikely, but good luck. Saka to Mbeumo or Palmer? Apologies. This week I prefer Palmer. Long term, Mbeumo's the better transfer. So it really depends on what you're looking for, but Mbeumo's my preference. I'm also be looking at Gameweek 35, 36 and all of that. So yeah, I would favour Mbeumo overall. Would you captain Evanilson? What about Sessegnon and Salavice? I wouldn't be captaining Sessegnon personally. I think having him is already enough of a differential. My favourite captains this week are Salah and Isak. I think it's very close between those two. Evanilson's a decent shout. He's not in my top 10, but you could easily make a case for him. And I think he could score against United. No Punjabi, it's not necessary, but I'd always recommend having one decent option just in case, because what if you have a player in your starting 11 who doesn't feature at all with a late, injury or maybe a late change to the lineup and he's on the bench and he doesn't come on. So I'd always encourage one good option, but you don't need to have like a bench like mine with Jose Sarr, Kluivert, Kirkis, Milenkovic, which could be a very strong one indeed. Weiseng says, I'd rather choose to believe Everton clean sheet than Chelsea. Well, there you go. That comes from a Chelsea fan. Start Semedo or Kirkes? I'd favour Semedo. I think Wolves have the best chance, probably behind Newcastle, of a clean sheet. That's the way I see it. Yeah, why Raul over Wood? I think, well, with Rodrigo Muniz out of the picture, Raul Jimenez will have good minutes this week. I'm not saying he's locked in my team, by the way, because I might even drop him to the bench or do something a little bit different with Evanilson or Welbeck, for example. But yeah, Chris Wood, he is still ranked very highly for me, especially long term. But for this week, you've also got the FA Cup semi-final, and I think that's a big part. You've also got a tough game in Brentford. I also don't think Chris Wood has a great record against them. Only 2 goals against Brentford is in his entire career in the Championship and Premier League, which is a pretty average record, to say the least. Between Trent and Howson, who do I start in my defence? I'd go for the higher ceiling of Trent Alexander-Arnold. And who should I start between Bowen and Wood? I'd favour Jared Bowen this week. Play Cliver or Iwobi. I prefer Cliver there. K. Murph. Sell Kivior or Munoz for very long term. Well, I like Kivior for Gameweek 38 against Southampton away, but not against Newcastle, Liverpool or Bournemouth. So oddly enough, I might actually suggest keeping Munoz, even though Palace have pretty average fixtures as well. Welcome, Ahmed. Happy free hit game week. Good morning, my friend. 5:30 a.m. in Toronto. Feeling this is going to be a high-scoring week. Mate, I struggle to wake up at 8 a.m., so yeah, 5:30. I mean, I'm going to be doing that next month, but it's not something I'm looking forward to. How about Gakpo on the free hit? Yeah, look, once again, I mentioned this before. We don't know exactly who's going to start. You know, Salah's nailed on, but then what about the other two positions? I think Diaz is a bit more likely than Jota and Gakpo. Between those two, I couldn't tell you who's going to start. I'd probably say Jota, but I'm not entirely convinced about that. And a lot of predicted lineups I saw actually had Gakpo instead. So, yeah, if he starts, I'm very happy with that sort of pick, but it's a high risk, high reward scenario with the minutes. Would you start Mbeumo and Bruno on the free hit? Well, I've not really considered them too much this week. I think Mbeumo would be higher up than Bruno Fernandes, but I do prefer these four midfielders, Kluivert, Harvey Barnes. So I think there are better options elsewhere. Jared Bowen as well. Upo says, hey Dylan, Salah, Diaz, Neto, Bowen, Mbeumo, Mitoma, Barnes, Isak, Cunha, Wood. Which player should I start out of those 7? Neto/Bowen. I prefer Bowen, by the way, just to make that very clear. So yeah, you start Salah. I'd go for Diaz. I'd also start Bowen, Barnes, Isak, Cunha, probably Chris Wood. So I've had to bench one of them. It actually might be Mbeumo this week, which is very risky, by the way. He's not the sort of player I ever like benching. Hi Dylan, start Mitoma or Raul? Slight preference for Raul, but Mitoma's not too far away. He honestly isn't. Iwobi, Kluivert or Semenyo as a differential this game week? Kluivert. Forest defender. I think Forest, Brentford, I've gone for 1-1. So, yeah, Milenkovic is on my bench. I don't see myself starting him. Well, yeah, a lot of votes there, as you mentioned, over 500. Obviously, people tuning in at different intervals in this stream, but good to see people here. I guess a lot of people are activating the free hit or just have no idea what to do for Blank Gameweek 34, but a lot of these questions have been answered, and very soon I will be focusing on my team. Kirkus for me, Organ. You can also see Kirkus in my 50-man squad, which would give you that sort of implication. Ivanosson or Welbeck? Ivanosson, but very close. I'm going Bruno and Bowen over Diaz. Penalty takers surely are a better pick on a free hit. Yeah, Diaz is a slight minutes concern, I get that, but I also think the ceiling is higher than Bruno this week. Timothy says, hey Dylan, I have free transfers and the free hit. If I activate the free hit chip, will the free transfer still be available? Yes. I have Jackson. Should I sell him for Cunha? I mean, Jackson against Everton at home, if he actually has his shooting boots on, could he haul? Absolutely, but I do prefer Cunha, and I understand why you're thinking about this transfer. I'd lean towards yes, and I have gone for a low-scoring affair of 1-0 for Chelsea, and that could easily be a draw, 1-1. Everton can cause problems. Milenkovic or Howson, who to start? Okay, so in my case, I've gone for Kirkus over Milenkovic, but it might be slightly different of Howson because his attacking threat isn't as prominent as Kirkus from open play. You're relying on set pieces there, and Milenkovic also has that in his locker. So out of those two, I'd probably favour Milenkovic, but not by much. Fulham feels like a trap. I get that. You might be right about it. Start Flecken or Areola? Oh, I think both of them concede. I mean, I've gone for 2-2 in the West Ham game, and I went for 1-1 in the Brentford game, but it's also about the saves, because Areola could concede more goals and lose, 1 point for it, but then gain it through the saves. I would favour Flecken out of the two. Is Cunha starting? I think so, yes, but Bellegarde is back in the equation, which isn't great news for Cunha owners. Kluivert or Jimenez to start? I've gone for Jimenez right now, but in my team selection, it was the other way around. It is one of my 50-50 calls this week, which hopefully I can address before the deadline closes. It's between starting Kluivert or Konate. I would go for Kluivert there, TJW. I just think his ceiling is way higher. Jai M says Iwobi and Ivanosson or Raul and Diaz. close, but I'd go for Jimenez and Diaz. So yeah, Oppo, I did answer your question. Fun fact, Jackson has a higher XGI than Cunha and Larson. Cunha's XGI isn't great. His stats in general for the goal scoring are quite underwhelming, but the creativity is decent, and he also outperforms his XG quite considerably. Chris Wood or Raul Jimenez? For this week only, I'd say Jimenez. Allison or Leno? Leno. Would you start Raul or Trent? Jimenez. Raul Jimenez. Pradipto says, who should be the third forward apart from Isak and Cunha? Well, for me, it's between Jimenez, Wissa, Ivanosen, and Welbeck. The way I'd rank it is probably Jimenez third. I think Strand Larsen fourth. Ivanosen fifth. Kluivert or Ivanosen? Kluivert. Barnes or Murphy? So once again, a lot of these questions are basically answered on screen with the players I've picked. I've gone for Murphy at the moment. It's very close. It can go either way, but I've gone for Jacob Murphy. Well, I'm not sure if Salah's a trap. I mean, he is facing Tottenham. He's going to get chances. He missed 3 big opportunities against Leicester in the first half alone. It's just his shooting boots aren't necessarily on right now. But I just think it's a very close call between him and Isak in general. It can go either way. You can captain Isak, he gets 1 goal, then Salah gets a brace and an assist, and then you're like, oh, I should have captained Salah. But ultimately, they're both great picks this week. And on paper, they stand out above the rest by some distance. Thank you, Roy. Thoughts on the same team as you, but Pope and Mbeumo instead? Well, I'm looking at Pope, actually, instead of Leno, which would mean Trippier makes way. Of course, you're probably saying Mbeumo for Murphy in that case, but I'm not that sure about Murphy right now. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, Trent is a concern with the minutes. I've said that quite a few times. Cucurella or Trent? I prefer Trent at the moment, but in terms of clean sheet odds, I could definitely see Chelsea being higher up than Liverpool. I've gone for 1-0 Chelsea and 3-1 Liverpool. From that perspective, you can definitely make a case for starting Cucurella instead. Absolutely. Twisted Park keepers is free at team. Pope, Robinson, Trent, 8 Nuri, Gordon, Diaz, Salah, Iwobi, Isak, Strand Larsen, Ivanosen, Kluivert, Cucurella, Kirkers, and Leno on the bench. I like it, and interesting that you went for Gordon. Not sure I want Pope, Newcastle defence, Diaz or Murphy for Gordon. Cunha, Ivanosen, risky, can't make double Newcastle mid-work. Don't like the defence ideas. I get it, and I think it's a case of Nick Pope being the best goalkeeper in isolation, but at the same time, he's not part of the best Newcastle triple-up, you know, you'd probably say, because you'd probably favour Isak, Murphy and Barnes as a trio. But yeah, it can go either way. I do think Newcastle have the best chance for clean sheet, though, and it's worth going in that direction, in my opinion. Thank you, Jayem. Thanks for answering my question. Love that you are going for every one of them. Thank you very much. I'm trying my best. My voice is gone, by the way. I'm not sure what's happened, but I'll try to keep it going. Palmer's form has been poor, yet in 99% of free hit teams. Well, it's a case of the player, what he's capable of. And in FPL, we're predicting future points, not talking about, you know, what they've done recently all the time. Of course, you can definitely make cases either way, and you can shift narratives the way you want. I get your concern about Palmer, and I've never said, you know, at one stage this week that he's locked in on my free hit. You know, if this was this time last year, there'd be no hesitation, no question about it, because Palmer was on fire. It's not the case now, but I just think he can score against Everton, and he has done it in the past before. 4 goals against them at Stamford Bridge, but that doesn't really mean too much now if he's not able to score clear-cut chances and missing some big opportunities. Is Neto from Chelsea a good player to pick? For this week, I think he's decent. He'd be probably second in my list for Chelsea attackers, maybe third. I think Palmer, Jackson, then Neto. But yeah, he's just a player that is very unreliable in front of goal. Can he score against Everton? Absolutely, but he's got 4 goals this season in the Premier League. Let's not forget that. Salah says, I don't get the appeal from Palmer. Last goal was 21, and Everton's a good defence. I would much rather have someone like Kluivert against a United side that will rest players. I get that. And look, Palmer might actually drop out of my 11 or from my team entirely, but it's also a case of the capability of the player. I know you're trying to predict future points, and, you know, Palmer has been in poor form, so it would suggest that, you know, if you're playing it from that sort of perspective, he isn't really viable. But let's not forget that Kluivert has also come off the back of an injury, and he's also, you know, getting back up to speed as well. So yeah, that's been covered to death, so respectfully, I'm not going to go through that too much. In Mbeumo versus Neto versus Diaz, my favourite this week is Diaz. Isn't Wood a decent option for third forward? Yes, he is, but there could be a slight concern with the minutes. There really could. Jay Braz says, hi, Dylan, hope you're doing well. Who is the I don't have a list. Who is the best fifth midfielder for this game week? I have Salah, Saka, Eze, Rodgers, and just bought Barnes. Well, I still like Palmer a lot, but you've also got Cliver, Iwobi. I think in your case, yeah, you just bought Barnes, to be fair. I think Murphy would be right up there. So if you do have that Newcastle spot available and you're happy to triple up there, I'd say Murphy. I think Barnes does start, yeah. Might have missed it, but do we get any news on Sessegnon? Just a quote by Marcus Silva yesterday, which I did cover earlier. I'll go through it one more time in this section, and then I'm going to focus on my team here. So, let's go to the FDR. So the teams at the top from now until the end of the season are Forest, Wolves, West Ham, Bournemouth and Man City. And some top teams like Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea and Brighton are in the bottom 5. With predicted points, Salah is top, Isak and Palmer make up the podium. Cunha, Barnes, Raul Jimenez, Strand Larsen, Chris Wood, Diaz and Evanussen complete the top 10. With the assistant manager for this week only, of course, forget the teams that are blanking. This is the ranking here. So Leicester, of course, bottom as they usually are. Spurs in 14th there. The top 3 are Frank, Howe and Slot. And those would be my favourite options as well. I think from a table bonus perspective, Frank would be probably my favourite. I think so. I mean, Potter, not too shabby. I've gone for a draw there. But yeah, if you want to go a bit safe, I think Howe or Slot, very solid choices there for the assistant manager. With price changes, according to Fantasy Football Hub, let's actually refresh this just in case. So Trippier, Van Dijk, Sells, Milenkovic, Aït-Nouri, Murillo, Mbumo, Sessegnon, Robinson, Livramento, Leno, Barnes, Strand Larsen, Elanga, Chris Wood could all go up in price tonight. Maybe not all of them though. That's something worth mentioning. And let's also get this message off the screen. I want to go Gordon, but not sure how likely he plays. Do I go different? Everyone has Diaz, Salah, Pope in goal, want a Newcastle actual defender, but then end up with Leno or Sanchez. Yeah, that's the problem that I find myself in. I think Pope is the best goalkeeper in isolation, but maybe not the most exciting of picks, so to speak, especially with Newcastle having a high ceiling this week. Let's also go to the stats comparison once more of Barnes versus Murphy. Such a commonly asked question, and I get it. I mean, I've been on the Murphy train since Game Week 30. He's done very well for me, but so has Harvey Barnes in that time frame, and both of them are at risk of dropping out for Anthony Gordon or being sobbed off for him, and we could see Gordon shift to the right, but I think it's more likely that Barnes will be at risk from Anthony Gordon than Jacob Murphy. That's just my opinion, but neither are 90-minute players. They both have similar appearances and stats across the board, especially with the goal scoring, but Barnes does lead in certain metrics like shots in the box, quite considerably actually, and in terms of the XG, Murphy is still slightly ahead, but Barnes will be slightly higher in terms of XG per 90. And with the creativity, there's no comparison really. Murphy has a lot more numbers there, double the number of big chances created, and almost double the number of key passes. And the expected assist is also quite healthy at exactly 5. But both great options, they really are. And ultimately, you want to go for both of them in an ideal world. Let me actually go to fpl.team to show you my Game Week 35 squad briefly. So that is currently my team there without making any transfers. I'd only have one free transfer at my disposal because I've activated the free hit this week and I only had one free transfer to begin with. So for Blank Gameweek 34, I might end up going for something like this with Pope and Sessegnon, which I talked about in my team selection video yesterday. Now, fpl.team don't suggest this, and in fact, they recommend Leno and Trippier, but other algorithms like Fantasy Football Hub do recommend going for Pope and Sessegnon or Robinson instead. That is something I am still weighing up, and yeah, I might have to just make some quick decisions before the deadline. Now, FPL Challenge, I'm only going to go for it here for now because, yeah, we can talk about this after the deadline for a little bit longer once, you know, we have nothing more to talk about for Blank Gameweek 34 and our free hit squads and all of that. But I've gone for Jose Sarr, Aït-Nouri, Salah captain, Barnes and Isak here to differentiate myself a little bit from my FPL squad. So that's kind of the way I've been playing FPL Challenge this season. Now, before I go back to my team and start locking in some transfers and stuff, these are some polls I put out yesterday. So Nick Pope is the top goalkeeper here with 43% of the votes. Leno is second, only narrowly behind. Then you've got Jose Sarr versus Leicester and Sells. They are both sharing 10%. So 57% of you think that Sessegnon will start. Let's see if that has changed a little bit. It's gone slightly down to 56%. So the other option was just to go for Robinson instead and avoid the headache. The third Newcastle player to complement Isak and Murphy, 34% have gone for Barnes. And then you've got Trippier in second with 31%, Livramento third, and Pope in last. Now, which player would you bench out of Jimenez, Diaz, Kluivert, and Palmer? Well, the Dutchman is top, and he is currently on my bench, which I'm not too happy about, by the way. He has 3 goals in 3 games against Man United. And the last poll is about the captaincy, and Salah does lead quite easily. But Isak does have a decent number of votes there with 29%. Cunha is third with 10, and the other option has 4. And a lot of people did mention Harvey Barnes in the comments section. So those are all the polls, all the graphics, everything you need to know. Top 10 captaincy options. I currently have Salah just above Isak, but that's literally neck and neck. And predicted points, all of that jazz has been ticked off. Let's now go to my FPL squad and start locking certain things in. Like this video as well, if you haven't done so already. We are getting closer towards 200 likes, and we are looking to make a late push towards 33,000 subscribers. So right now, we're just over 100 away from that milestone. Thank you to those that have supported the channel, all the members, patrons, and everyone who has tuned in to every single deadline stream and video. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, I'm probably still going to go for Palmer, but I get the concerns about him. Oh my, another one here by Lager. I don't understand why Palmer's such a popular pick this weekend with his current form, plus the last fixture against Everton was 0-0. But that was with Sean Dyche, not David Moyes. I don't think they have been as solid defensively. I know they've obviously gotten good results for the most part, a lot of draws, but I think Palmer can still score, but I get your concern. Yeah, why not Chris Wood over Raul? A lot of these questions have been answered before, mate. So essentially with Chris Wood, you've got the difficult game against Brentford and backing a 1-1 draw, and also Chris Wood has a poor record against Brentford, only 2 goals against them in his career, and you've got the FA Cup semi-final to think about as well. It's a free hit, so you should only put the FDR games to this week only, surely. Well, I was just showing the FDR from now until the end of the season for those that are, you know, making transfers. I want to cover all bases, but I can go back to that very quickly and show the Gameweek 34 FDR. It's not going to be anything groundbreaking. It's going to be very similar to the clean sheet odds that you saw recently. So if you go here to the FDR, yeah, we're going to see the same team. So Wolves, Newcastle, Chelsea, Brighton, Southampton. Wait, what? Why is Southampton 5th? Surely this is wrong. Oh, there you go. I mean, personally, I have Liverpool top 4. I'd put, you know, Tottenham as an easier fixture than most of these. So some interesting results, you could say. Maybe an unexpected one there. Because, you know, Spurs are bottom. They're 16th, but Liverpool are 7th. I don't know, but there you go. That's the FDR for Gameweek 34 only. For what it's worth, I think, yeah, Wolves, Newcastle top 2. I completely agree with. I'd put Liverpool 3rd or 4th, and there you go. Fulham in 9th does seem very low. I mean, I don't know if there's a glitch there with Southampton 5th, but maybe they're backing something that we're not seeing. So feel free to rewind that and pause if you need to. But let's now lock in my free hit squad. Thank you, Bajabi. As he says, let's get this stream to as many likes as possible. 200 is the aim. We are getting very close to that. All right, so this poll seems done and dusted, although it's not too far off. So the Pope, Robinson, Sessegnon route has won. So I'm going to do one quick one here about the best Fulham defender. So which Fulham defender would you pick on the free hit? Sessegnon and Robinson. So I'm going to do a lot of quick fire polls here. And of course, some of them I have done yesterday. So I'll try to cover new ground. This one is quite similar to one I did yesterday. So yeah, I'll only leave it for a minute or two, I think. Raul or Welbeck? Raul Jimenez for me. The reason people go Palmer is he did well last year and not no Tarkowski. That's true. And also, there is no Sean Dyche to set them up rigidly defensively. I think David Moyes has gone the best out of their attack, but they do concede more chances. But yeah, with Palmer, he's been poor for a long while, but For those obviously without Palmer in the normal teams, it's a good time to have him for 1 week only. Then Chelsea have poor fixtures from, Game Week 35 until the end. So it's like a pure 1 week punt, basically. More likes, people. Thank you very much, Twisted Parky. If you like, you get more luck in 34. If only it was that simple, but yeah. Hi, mate. Will Matoma start? I think he will. Barnes or Murphy? I've gone for Murphy personally. They're both great options on paper. I like Matoma as a differential. He's not in my team, but that doesn't mean he's a bad option. Maria says, Dylan, I have the same exact team as you, apart from Session instead of Trippier, and my free is active. Yeah, my free is also active. And yeah, I think Session is a good option this week. He is the definition of a 1 week punt, playing as a right winger. Imagine you had Session and kept Trippier and Aït-Nouri, who would be your goalkeeper. Maybe Robert Sanchez there, Twister Parky? Maybe. That is something I'm thinking about. Vishal says, Sanchez, Aït-Nouri, Session, Trippier, Salah, Semenyo, Iwobi, Barnes, Isak, Captain, Strand, Larson, Welbeck, rate my team. I mean, it's a solid free hit team, I guess. Or maybe it's not a free hit team and it just looks like one, but Semenyo, I'm not too sure about. I'll be honest, but the rest I'm very happy with. Now, if you're bullish about Semenyo, don't let me discourage you. I think he's very inconsistent. I would go for Cliver over Semenyo there, Organ. Yobro, Sol, Mateta, or Watkins for Cunha this week. Well, they're both blank now, but then longer term, Aston Villa could double in 36. Then again, you've got Rashford competing with Watkins for that forward spot. So, difficult one to say, but I would favour Ollie Watkins for now. So, Sessegnon he's leading this vote quite easily. In Boomer or Cliver, for this week, it would be Cliver. Jose Sarr or Bentley? I think Jose Sarr starts. In Boomer, Diaz or Cliver? I prefer Diaz this week. Alfred says, will Matoma start? Once more, mate. Yes. I don't know how else I should say it. C. I don't know how to say in German. Let's move on. Bruno Fernandes and thoughts? I mean, what about him? He's a good option on the free hit. I think there are better choices on paper, but he is by far the best United asset. There's no doubt about it. I just think Bournemouth have the edge and they're more likely to win. And I don't see a high ceiling for Fernandes. He is on penalties, though. He can always churn out something, from out of nowhere. But, yeah, not my favourite midfielder pick. In Boomer to Murphy to upgrade one defender to Trent, free hit. Well, I'm not a massive fan of Mbeumo this week anyway, and he is fixture-proof. Not a great record against Forest, but he could do well this weekend against, this week against a team that obviously are focusing on the FA Cup semi-final. But yeah, my answer would be go to Murphy and then upgrade a defender to Trent. But it also depends which defender, because if we're talking about Aït-Nouri or Trippier, I don't think they're actually worse than Trent this week. Barnes or Cliver? Probably Barnes in isolation, to be fair. Would you sell Mateta or Watkins? Covered. Start Nico Williams over Konate. Close one. I've gone for both teams to concede. I'd probably favour Konate this week. Triple Newcastle attack. It's a good strategy. I'm not against it, but I also think they've got the best chance for clean sheet, so I would recommend having one of their defenders if possible, or Nick Pope in goal. Well, crazy punt. Maybe Sessegnon, I guess. Trent is also a little punt, you could say, but I think Sessegnon is the biggest punt of them all. Okay, so let's have a look to see if there are any leaks. I doubt that's going to be the case, but it's always worth having a look. It's been a while since we've seen one of them. Yeah, I don't see absolutely anything. I've seen a weird tweet. I'm not sure if Darwin Nunez actually posted this. He did delete it, but yeah, you can safely assume he's not going to start. But yeah, that is obviously quite straightforward, you could say. All right, so we only have less than 5 minutes left. Let's lock everything in. Abhishek says, not on free hit, wildcard 35. I have 11 players starting, including Castagna and Cher. Should I go ahead with that or take more hits? Well, I don't think either start personally. And I think it could be worth selling Cher, for example. I'd be surprised if he did start this week. I don't think he will. So is it worth taking another hit? It's, for a defender, you're looking at maybe Aït-Nouri this week. Trippier. There aren't many defenders I take a hit for. I'm not going to lie to you. So you probably stick with what you have, but if you don't have Aït-Nouri, for example, I think it might be worth a a 1 week punt there. It might be. All right, so yeah, I don't see anything at all. Let's see. Well, let's lock things in. Start Iwobi or Mbumo? I'd favour Iwobi this week. Diaz, Matoma, Mbumo, bench 1. I would bench Mbumo from those 3. Yeah, lock in exactly that, Sanika. That is the plan. Don't worry, I will be locking in. I've never missed a deadline since doing videos. I have midfield and 4 slots available, says Abhishek. Yeah, I'd recommend that sort of thing. Maybe Cunha up front, for example. Even though it doesn't look great for the future game weeks, that could be very solid. Yeah, I'll be confirming the team now, don't worry. Leno or Jose Sarr? I am leaning towards Leno. I'm leaning towards Jose Sarr at the moment. I'm betting against Rain, ain't scoring. A lovable troll, but a troll nonetheless. Yeah, he is very, very poor. I think Murphy will start Akraf, yes. And same with Pedro Neto, but I couldn't guarantee that, to be fair. So, let's lock in this bloody team. So, let's see. Let's go for some changes here. So yeah, we've literally got less than 3 minutes. I don't want to leave things to the last minute here. So I'm going to go for Pope, I think. Get rid of Trippier. I'm going to take a punt on Sessegnon, as covered in my free hit video. And Milenkovic, who is in my normal team, might make way. It's not really a big deal. So I'm going to go a little bit different here. With the midfield and attack, I'm fairly happy with this platform. Yeah, I'm fairly happy with it. So I'm going to go for this sort of structure. Make the transfers. So Leno, Trippier, Milenkovic out for Pope, Sessegnon, and Cucurella. Now it's about locking things in. Oh, wow. So player prices have changed. I've got to refresh this again, apparently. So the FPL website can be a bit of a pain in the ass. So I've literally only got 1 minute left. So let's get this locked in. So I know what I want to do. Pope, Cucurella, and the other one is going to be Sessegnon. Okay. Make sure to lock things in. We're literally in last chance saloon here. So I've got Pope in goal, 8 Nuri, Sessegnon, Alexander-Arnold, Palmer, Murphy, Diaz, Salah captain, Isak Weiss, Jimenez, and Cunha. And I've got Jose Sarr, Kluivert, Kirkes, and Cucurella on the bench. There could be a late shift in terms of my final defender. I am looking at potentially dropping Trent. That is something I am looking at, but I might just go all in on the Liverpool party, so to speak. That is my current plan. But yeah, a lot of free hits will look similar, unfortunately. That is pretty much what we are going for here. But yeah, I think I'm going to stick with this. Yeah, I'm fairly happy with this. And we are literally locked in, literally in just a second or two. And there we go. So that is my final team for Blank Gameweek 34, the free hit. So it's pretty much identical to what I discussed in my team selection video. In fact, the only change really is obviously Jose Sarr comes in for Bentley, since there was a positive update about his fitness now, and Cucurella's coming for Milenkovic, but everything is pretty much as you'd expect. No real changes from that video. Of course, Jimenez and Diaz both start, and Kluivert is on the bench now. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite me in the ass. Thank you, Paredes, for gifting many memberships. That's greatly appreciated. So once more, 10 more memberships. We are very close, by the way, to 100 members, and a big shout out goes to Paredes for that. And of course, Napstars, both of you have really helped the channel grow. Let's get this video to 200 likes. I have answered hundreds of questions. Trust me, if you don't believe me, just rewind the stream and see how many questions I've gone through, comments, discussing different ideas, and hopefully this has provided a lot of insight to you. And let's also push on towards new goals like 33,000 subscribers. We are getting very close towards that milestone, around 100 away from it. And the fun doesn't stop here, because I'll still be going through some different screens. FPL Challenge, for example, talking about predictions. But the likes of Dergish, Mark Casserly, Pratik, James Garuba, Stefan. Let's also get the other ones. My chat is frozen. Fakri, Edwin, Natasha, Mesfer. All of you have been gifted a membership, so big up to Paredes and also to yourselves. You will get early access to my videos and many other perks like priority reply to comments in videos and live streams. Check out all the perks in the description. The same goes for if you become a patron by going to that website. There was a change, of course, in that username, so it's patreon.com/FPLDylan now, and you'll be able to find me. But by tapping either that or Dylan RCM, you'll be able to find me across any social media platform, essentially. Yeah, Isak captain, I've been very bullish on him all week, but I have gone for Salah. I'm backing Liverpool to win comprehensively here against Tottenham Hotspur. Maybe I'll end up regretting that late captaincy switch, because that was made this morning when I was setting up the stream. We'll see how that goes. But for reference, this was my team before my final transfers today. So I had Leno in goal, I had Milenkovic on my bench, but pretty much the same kind of thing, really. Trippier, of course, to cover Newcastle defensively. But now I've gone for Pope. I've gone for Sessegnon as that 1 week punt. We'll see how that all turns out. But interesting times are ahead, and we'll see how these 50-50 calls go. A green arrow is obviously the aim. Getting into the top 100k is also going to be a challenge, but also attainable. I'm 24 points away from that, but hopefully the free it can catapult me towards that sort of rank, and we'll see how that ends up going. Let's see. Last second change, Barnes to Murphy, but I think Murphy will not start. That's interesting. I'm not sure why you would go for Murphy if you don't think he starts, but I think all of those players, including Anthony Gordon, can make an impact off the bench. I would say that the best player in terms of making an impact off the bench would be Harvey Barnes out of the three, but his minutes are also the least secure between him, Gordon, and Murphy long term. I think he will start though. So yeah, Zaid says, let's go. Well, I haven't dropped Trent Alexander-Arnold. We'll see how that ends up going. There are a few risks, of course, in my free hit team. Did a -4 for Rodgers to Barnes. Will wildcard in 35. Yeah, even off the bench, I think Barnes can get your return, and I think he will start for what it's worth. But now everything is locked in. Fair play for starting Trent, says Simon. Yeah, well, we'll wait and see. We will wait and see. Nashby says, how did you get the membership? Well, Paredes gifted 10 just now, and then it's completely random. YouTube just allocate them randomly. I have done research before, and it does indicate that if you are active in the chat, it does boost your chances, but I'm not sure exactly, you know, what kind of maths are involved there. Thank you, Paredes. Thanks, Dylan, for another live. See you back in UCL Fantasy. Not long, only a couple of days until that deadline stream on Tuesday. Be sure not to miss it for Matchday 15, the first leg of the semi-finals. And I will be making a best team video combining the Limitless and the wildcard squads into one, because I'll be honest, if you are using the Limitless, you're not really going to gain too much in terms of money, because I think everyone will be able to afford, you know, the most expensive 50-man squad with our current budget, because we've got a lot of premiums out of the door now. Of course, the likes of Mbappe and Kane eliminated. So, yeah, it just makes it very, very simple. Do you think FPL creators have destroyed or enhanced the game with regards to 90% of players copying drafts? It's a double-edged sword, right? I think it really also depends on what kind of creators you're on about, but I think a lot of channels do offer insight, different opinions, and also discussion points. But I always say when I make UCL and FPL videos, I always encourage people not to copy. Even when I'm doing well in UCL Fantasy, I get it. You know, if you're top 1K or stuff like that, people want to copy and, you know, have that platform and security of winning their mini leagues and stuff. But I always say the kind of purpose of why I do the videos and stuff is to have a conversation, discuss ideas, and to improve as FPL managers. I know a lot of it is down to luck ultimately, but there is an element of skill to consistently finish in a certain rank. And yeah, I mean, is there a case of, you know, creators destroying the game? Potentially, in terms of how strong the template is amongst those that are, you know, engaged on YouTube or X. But if you still think about it, the grand FPL populace, if you will, a lot of people still play casually. Like, I've got so many leagues where people barely watch any videos or live streams. Like, I've got a few friends who tune into my one just as a bit of banter, but they don't actually engage that much in the content. But yeah, I think for those that really, you know, watch and these live streams and videos regularly, maybe they do get influenced, even subconsciously, about certain picks and stuff like that. But I'll be honest, I try to avoid all other content as much as possible. I just focus on my own thing and try to have my own ideas. But I just probably need to think outside the box a little bit more with the players I actually end up buying, and then just hope for a bit more luck in the process. That's pretty much what I'm kind of aiming for. Yeah, Durgish, big up to Breaders once more. I've gone Cunha captain. All the best, Ansari. He is third in my captaincy list. I think the minutes is the only concern, but I think he does start. Surely you can't drop Barnes with the form he's in. I think he'll start. I've said that multiple times. I think Trent gets 60 plus minutes, the same with Sessegnon, and that's also the hope. If they don't, then I'll be very, very upset. Mohammed says, good luck, Dylan. Likewise. We all know there will be some benchings like Trent, Cunha, Murphy, and it will hurt. Well, if they all happen at the same time, then yeah, I'm not going to enjoy this week. Easy puts us free at team. All the best. Looks solid. FPL Kevy says, how are you doing? Looking forward to the games. Got a lot of different players due to teams blanking. Well, I did cover your question earlier where I think you said the same thing about having a lot of differentials. And I did ask if you're actually, if you wanted to name them, feel free to do so. This was early in the stream. So probably over an hour ago, if I remember correctly. My FPL Challenge team, Saar, 8 Nuri, and Boomer, Isak, Captain, Strand Larsen. Yeah, definitely worth going different in FPL Challenge if you are going very template in FPL. I've gone for Jose Saar, 8 Nuri, Salah, Barnes, and Isak, and I might change the captaincy to Barnes and have the best of both worlds, so to speak, if the Salah captaincy ends up flopping. Music Kiwi says, I'm cooked, I went Gordon. If he starts, though, you might not feel that way. Whatever happens, on to next week, says Ethan. Well, yeah, that is the aim, but hopefully it's a green arrow and a very successful free hit. Adil says, just bought Palmer for the bench instead of Mbumo, so when he does well, I'll be able to see all those points rotting away on my bench. That's masochism, mate. Dylan, I have the same defenders on the free hit. Well, for both of our sakes, Dominic, hopefully they all start, get 60 plus minutes and some returns. We'll see. We'll definitely see. Twisted Parky says, team of the top 9, including Dylan, YouTubers, Leno, or Poby, kind of free. 8 Nuri, Trippier, Sessegnon, Salah, Diaz, Murphy, Palmer, Raul, Isak, Cunha, Bench, Saar, Trent, Mbumo, Cucurella. Oh, right. I'm just wondering, because what about Barnes? I thought Barnes would be a bit more popular. Changed last second, Chris Wood to Raul. I do like Jimenez more than Chris Wood this week. Longer term is a different story, which I did cover in a lot of detail. Nicely done, Easy. That's a good rank in FPL Challenge. Chelsea-Everton, early Gandhi kickoff curse. Aren't you a Chelsea fan? So you'd be hoping that isn't the case. I started Cliver over Raul. That was my plan in my team selection, and I could see that being one of my regrets this week, but I hope that isn't the case, and Fulham can score a few goals against Southampton. If Rodrigo Menez wasn't ruled out, though, I think Cliver would have ended up being on my starting 11, or I would have just gone for a different midfielder/forward. That could have been Strand Larsen, Jared Bowen, etc., but that is all done and dusted. I think there's one more question here. No, Seller, no. I've just basically made a free hit team and kind of pool of players and template from the beginning of the week. I made it in my free hit video. If you actually check this team and compare it to what I talked about there, it's pretty much the same. It's, yeah, something I've been very consistent about all week. Only 2 out of 9 YouTubers had Barnes. I'm surprised by that. I'm actually surprised by that. It's probably the Anthony Gordon factor, which plays a big part in it. But I'll be honest, just because it's a free hit and I've got Murphy in my original team, I was really tempted to go for Harvey Barnes, but I ended up sticking with Murphy. He's done well for me. Hopefully he does it one more time. Has this free hit been tough with so many people picking a lot of the same players and captaining Salah? But it is natural. I mean, there are 4 teams blanking, and we have standout fixtures in Wolves, Newcastle, and Liverpool. So all week I've been saying I'd double or triple up on those teams. The same goes for Fulham. And then you have 1 or 2 players from Chelsea, Bournemouth. So it's not really too much of a surprise that our teams are quite similar. In terms of, before maybe you could say creators had a bigger influence on the game and how people viewed FPL. Yeah, I mean, maybe there was a bit more variety. I definitely could see that. But I don't know, UCL Fantasy, for example, in the beginning part of the season, in the league phase, I see a lot of variety there. And I know there aren't as many creators there making videos and live streams, but I also think it's just the nature of the game and of the beast. I think in FPL, people naturally gravitate towards the same players, whilst in the Champions League, there might be less knowledge on teams. There's also more of a casual approach, and people kind of go for their own ideas more often, except for the people who copy me and every single move I do. But that's another story, which probably plays a part into the whole debate about creators and stuff like that. Anish says, goalkeeper, Sanchez, Session, Share, 8 Nuri, Salah captain, Diaz, Iwobi, Barnes, Alanga, Cunha, Isak, Leno, Wood, Milenkovic, Kirkes on the bench. Well, Share probably won't start, mate. I don't think you'll be in the squad, but it's obviously not a big deal for you because you've got Milenkovic coming on, but I'm not too sure about that, I'll be honest. I'm not too sure about Milenkovic this week. I actually got rid of him, one of my late changes from my free hit drafts earlier this week, but either way, it doesn't really matter because Cucurella is not starting for me. But yeah, it's a good squad overall. I just had to point out that I don't think Cher starts. The likes of Sessegnon, maybe Cunha, and Barnes could be minutes risks. The same goes for Diaz. And to be fair, any Forest player could be, with the semi-final obviously being a big factor. Yeah, Michael, no Brentford or Forest players at the moment. I know they obviously double or have double points in FPL Challenge. I might end up going for one of them, but not too sure. But back to the Anish thing. I mean, if anyone else has thoughts on this, let me know. But once more, it comes down to the fact that we all have a very similar kind of structure. But you've gone for a Iwobi instead of Jimenez in my case. You've also gone for a Langa, to be fair. You've gone for a lot of Forest players. But yeah, I like the look of the team as a whole. Robert Sanchez, if you can lock in a clean sheet early, that is a very good start. Oh no, Crown says rumours of Palmer benching. That is not what you want to hear. Definitely not. Good morning. Do you know the number of viewers of the FPL videos and live streams every week? Well, there is a data or data analytics section. So yeah, I do know the numbers. Sometimes I don't check them. I just make content and it is what it is. But yeah, there are tools to access that. 1Z Celsius says, I think I benched Bowen for Wood at the last second, but I'm not sure if it went through. Well, if it says team saved, maybe it didn't, but yeah, if you then click save and it said your team has been saved, it should all be good. My guess is that it would have gone through. Hoping Barnes gets 1 goal, 1 assist, then sub out. Hopefully not. Hopefully Blanks and Newcastle keep a clean sheet and Murphy gets the returns, but we all have our different wishes. I've gone triple Newcastle attack, hoping for Ipswich to score. Yeah, I get that. 4-1 would be perfect for you, something like that, but yeah, I'm still back in the clean sheet or hoping for it. Well, Big Sam, the deadline has passed, but oh, we're talking about Gameweek 35 already. Well, very early to do that. Sell Mateta. Yeah, I wouldn't be looking to buy Cunha necessarily next week, even though he can do well against City. But yeah, with what you have now, I don't think there's really anything else to discuss. We can delve more into this in future deadline streams and stuff like that. Just woke up, missed the deadline. Yeah, if it wasn't for the deadline stream, I'd be sleeping probably... Well, I would have woken up by now, to be fair. FPL Kevy says, my bad apologies. Starting Bowen, Elanga, Iwobi, hoping he starts. Cunha, Cucurella, 8 Nuri, Verbruggen. Quite different to the usual. Definitely. I had Verbruggen in my normal team, and I absolutely hate the guy and Brighton defensively, but I do like Bowen. You got some interesting picks in there for sure. But on the whole, I do like it. Especially, yeah, Cunha, Cucurella, 8 Nuri, Bowen. I really like the look of those players. Iwobi's decent. No Punjabi. But congratulations on the title. And hopefully next season, it's a different story. Arab says, went for Bruno on wildcard, had to take the risk. Thoughts? On the wildcard, he's decent. I think there could be rotation with United, but Bruno should start pretty much every single Premier League game anyway. I've got Welbeck as a sort of differential. He is. I mean, I don't think a lot of freeers would have gone for Welbeck. So that is an example of going a bit different and left field. The same goes for Strand Larsen and Cunha simultaneously. So Welbeck's ownership is 7%. Not too shabby. I mean, before the deadline passed. So this would have been an hour ago. Welbeck's ownership is actually higher than Jimenez, or it was. I don't think that'll be the case now, though. So I'll double check that. Ola Dilan, it will be my differential this week. Yeah, all the best with that. He has never scored against Southampton, but maybe this will be the first time. Got Mitoma as an ultimate differential. Interesting stuff there. I'm actually... I need to double check his record against West Ham. That's only one factor in terms of my decision-making when it comes to transfers, captaincy and stuff like that, but always interesting to see. So he has scored against West Ham before. In 4 appearances, he's got 1 goal. He's definitely capable of doing that. And it was a home game where he actually scored. But yeah, I thought he had a bit more than that, not going to lie. Anders says, I missed the deadline, so I now have 7 playing and no captain. Oof, yeah, if you captain and vice captain, yeah, blankers, then that is obviously a big pain indeed. Thoughts on Cunha to United? I'm not sure why he'd want to go there. I mean, I know United are a big club, but yeah, it'd be a good signing, I think. He does have an attitude problem, though. So, you know, if you're asking me, like, in 2-3 years, could I see Cunha moving on already? Probably. But a lot depends on circumstances. Yeah, Joao Pedro did get a red card last week, and he's going to miss the next couple of games. He's back in Game Week 37. That's when his suspension does end. So Jacob and Crown do confirm that Palmer starts, which is good news. Just Parky says, mate has Barnes and Murphy. Bought in Barnes, did not have him before. FPL Thomas Barnes, so increased to 3 or 4 in the end out of 9. Fair enough. I mean, I think Barnes will start, and I do like him as an option, but I wanted to also have that Newcastle defender or Nick Pope in goal. Chivane says, went to the doctors this morning and found out I have 5 gallbladder stones. I'm sorry to hear that, mate. Hopefully you can all have that sorted. I don't know too much about that, to be honest, and I'm definitely not a doctor, but yeah, hopefully you can recover and have everything sorted. So all the best to you, Chivane, and have a great weekend. What do you do a -4 to field a decent 11 and save 3 hit? Well, Alex and D, I hate to say it, the deadline has passed. But yeah, depends on the -4 hit in question. So, for example, if you're doing something like Mateta to Cunha, I take the punt and the -4 hit. But for a defender and goalkeeper, I definitely wouldn't for a goalkeeper, just to make that very clear. For a defender, a little bit more open, but still not really quite there yet. It's mainly the midfielders and forwards you want that to happen with. Yeah, I think Larson will start. Mojito says, do we know why there is a game on Thursday of next week with the Europa League occurring featuring 2 English teams? Well, it's just the schedule, right? And Forest, Brentford, I'll be honest, I don't know all the ins and outs, but essentially what they've done is with Forest being in the FA Cup semi-final, they have kind of scheduled things in such a way where they can still feature in Blank Gameweek 34, which is something I talked about even before that confirmation happened. But yeah, I don't know exactly why that is the case. I'd highly suggest you check out channels like Planet FPL. They will definitely have an explanation for that. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure about the ins and outs of that. Mikalenko or O'Brien for wildcard? Probably O'Brien, I guess. I mean, he was talked about in my best wildcard team video towards the end. He does help you a lot for Blank Gameweek 37. He also has a good fixture in Gameweek 35, facing Ipswich Town at home. So yeah, obviously they're both very similar, but probably Jake O'Brien is a slight preference of mine. Welcome, Alex. Strong lineup versus Everton for Chelsea. Beto also starts. Yeah, we can cover that now. We might as well. And I have shown my FPL Challenge team for quite a while now. So let me go to, let's see, my predictions. I'll leave this up on screen for a little bit whilst I get the lineups out. So I've gone for Chelsea 1, Everton 0. Brighton 2, West Ham 2, Newcastle 3, Ipswich Town 0, Southampton 1, Fulham 3, Wolves 2, Leicester 0, Bournemouth 2, Man United 1, Liverpool 3, Tottenham 1, and Nottingham Forest 1, Brentford 1. So let's get these lineups on the road, and we'll start off with Chelsea. And we'll also get Everton's as well here. All right. Not sure why I stunned that. Wait 1 second. Not a big deal, but let's put this into dark mode. Yeah. All right. I'll be. I don't know my way about around X, do I? Ah, here we go. Display. There we go. All right. Let us go with Chelsea. So, Chelsea have gone for Sanchez, Caicedo, Chalobah, Colwill, Cucurella, Lavia, Enzo, Madueke, Palmer, Neto, and Jackson. On the bench, they've got Jorgensen, Achimpong, Badiashile, Tosin, James, Dewsbury Hall, George, Sancho, and Nkuku. For Everton, they've gone for Pickford, Patterson, O'Brien, Branthwaite, Mikalenko, Garner, I just say just a Garner Gay and Garner, Decore, Harrison, Indai, and Beto. So no real surprises there. All the options you'd expect and hope to start are doing so. So now going back to my team, that is pretty much all we need to talk about with early kickoffs and stuff. Only one of them with this game, Chelsea-Everton. We'll find out later with Newcastle and stuff like that, and Fulham. Will our free hit assets start? Even Wolves tonight. Well, actually, we do have a lot of early games. We've got a very weird schedule. So we've got, obviously, the game at 12:30 PM UK time now, and we've got 4 games at 3 PM. So in terms of reaction stream, if there is one, it might be straight after the final game, but if not, it might be a little bit later, the kind of usual 6-7 PM time. But let me know if you want to see that. A reaction stream to discuss our initial thoughts about Blank Gameweek 34, previewing Gameweek 35, and discussing different ideas. Even if you're on your way out, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you to those that have done so already. A big up to Paredes, who sent in a super chat and also gifted 10 memberships in today's stream. Cunha is a big attitude player. Man United attracts players with big egos who think they can single-handedly lift the club out of the ashes, and it never works. Yeah, from an attitude perspective, I do agree. Now, Bruno Fernandes, probably not to the same level. I don't think Bruno has like an attitude problem with managers and stuff like that. But yeah, I think Cunha could be brilliant, but also very frustrating and maybe inconsistent for United. That's the way I kind of look at it. Yeah, Lavia back in the lineup. I think that bodes well for Enzo Fernandez and Palmer. Mina says, do you think City and Bournemouth have a higher chance of having a double in 36? Yes, they do. The most likely are Aston Villa and Spurs. Then it's City and Bournemouth. Alex says, yeah, but hypothetically, that's what I did. Fair enough. And it's probably time to wrap up since I can't even string a sentence together. Richard says, my team, Pope, Trippier, Williams, Doughty, Salah captain, Diaz, Bowen, Mbumo, Cliver, Isak, Wood, no bench, not very template, as it's not a free hit team. Looks very solid though. I mean, that can compete with a lot of free hit teams, in my opinion. Caicedo playing right back, so Ndai might have some fun, hoping Cucurella keeps a clean sheet. I'm hoping he doesn't, even though I've got Palmer, but of course we all are hoping for different things this week. Unless we've got the same teams. I hope I can get top 10k, have free hit and bench boost save this game week. I'm guaranteed a red arrow though. Well, all the best, Alex. I mean, with both chips available, that does give you a nice advantage over those without any chips. Of course, I've only got a free hit, which has been used this week, and that's about it for me. Reece James' bench means Cucurella will be in the mid and forward positions when Chelsea attacking. Yeah, but hopefully he does blank. Any early thoughts about Arsenal PSG? Going to be good. I'm backing Arsenal. Difficult to say. I mean, PSG lost for the first time yesterday in the league, so they can't win the league unbeaten anymore. But, of course, the title's dusted for them anyway. They played a very strong team, though. I mean, essentially it was their first 11. Dembele got an assist. There were some decent performances up front, but on the whole, very shaky at the back. So I was quite surprised by that. But, yeah, Arsenal, you can't really judge them too much because they've been poor in the Premier League all season. They haven't kept back-to-back clean sheets in this division since August. But I just think they turn it up for the Champions League, and they need to at the Emirates. I think it's kind of unrealistic to expect them to win 3-0 again, like they did against Madrid, to give them that big platform to go through to the next round. But if they can get a 1 or 2-0 win, have that kind of lead, that puts them in a good position. But it's going to be very difficult over both legs. PSG have never beaten Arsenal, in their history, but a bit similar to the Madrid-Arsenal kind of record. They haven't played that many times as well, but that could bode well for the Gunners. It's going to be very close. I would back Arsenal to win the first leg at least, but PSG can also be quite surprising. They beat Liverpool at Anfield and then lost at home. But yeah, I think Arsenal have a good chance. I think all of the semi-finalists would have a case of winning the whole thing. Twister Parky has also put his predictions. Chelsea 1, Everton 1, Brighton 1, West Ham 1, Newcastle 4, Ipswich Town 0, Southampton 0, Fulham 2, Wolves 2, Leicester 0, Bournemouth 3, United 0, Liverpool 3, Spurs 0, Forest 2, Brentford 1. Interesting. Liverpool to win 2-0 to win their 20th league title. Well, that'd be good for those with Trent if he starts and gets 60 plus minutes and stuff like that. We'll wait and see. Or John Walker says Reece James benched, free hit in a shambles already. Well, sorry to hear that, but as long as he doesn't get subbed on, there is still hope for you. I mean, you can still do well with 10 players performing for you, but yeah, it's not the way you want to start a free hit. Finley says, on Cunha to United, our team could look a lot different next season. We're heavily linked to Cunha, Delap, Edison, and a new goalkeeper. Yeah, Edison's a decent midfielder. Delap, I think he's a decent backup striker, but I mean, look, for where United are at right now, he's an upgrade on Højlund and Xerxes, but I do think United can still go for a better forward, so to speak. And I was asked about Delap to Arsenal, this season. I think Twister Parky made the question, and I'm not really on board with it, but those would be good signings, I guess. I think United need even more than that. At least 7 players of quality, I'd say, as well. Dub defense, Wolves and Fulham, Captain Larson. Well, good luck with the Larson captaincy pick. Hopefully it goes well for you. Spurs 2-1. Do you really think that? I mean, they've got a terrible record against Liverpool, especially at Anfield. Mate, that'd be a miracle if the Spurs won. Yeah, bro, reaction stream so I can rave about my 7 points. Okay, maybe therapy is needed. I want a reaction team with me suddenly at the world #1. Yeah, and then we wake up. Cunha's brilliant, but agree United have enough problems with his attitude. Yeah. I mean, I could see Cunha to United happening, but I don't know. More needs to be done, especially in that attack. I don't know if you noticed, but Cunha was getting into trouble again when playing against United. He's such a temperamental player. Well, he is. And of course, there was that suspension in December. Well, the one he should have got, with that altercation with the Ipswich Town coach. I mean, he ended up getting it, but it took a long while for that to happen. Yeah, Cunha definitely has an attitude problem, unfortunately. Osimhen to Chelsea, please. I mean, Chelsea do burn strikers, so it's not really a great career choice on paper. Gone without Murphy because of minutes risk, but regretting now. Well, you might end up feeling the opposite way again if he's on the bench, but hopefully that isn't the case. I don't think you really have any differentials, do you? Well, it depends how you look at it. Wait, this is sorry, this is my old team. Let's forget about that. This is my team. I'd say Sessegnon's a differential. So his ownership was 5.8%. This was overnight. It probably is like, what, 10% now? And free ownership could also be quite different with EO and stuff like that. But I'd class Sessegnon, I'd say Jimenez as differentials. And I'd say Nick Pope. Maybe, look, it's hard for me to judge. I haven't seen all the free hit teams and stuff, on YouTube and Twitter. I haven't really seen any of them. But yeah, that's what I've gone for. I think Trent isn't that popular. I know his effective ownership. Oh, fuck. Why did I do that? Yeah, now it's done that. But yeah, 20.7% ownership. Ugh. Oh, I saw me dreams. I thought they loaded up the website again. But you get my point. It's not going to be the biggest differential team you'll ever see. But at the same time, I think there are a few low-owned players in there. Cobo replacing Robert Sanchez. Yeah, Chelsea definitely need a new goalkeeper. But they've got 7 already. Maybe Petrovic. He's doing well on his loan spell. Flecken, Milenkovic, and Buma, Wood, and Visser. Captain, I don't know why, when I think Forest win. Is this a non-free hit team? That's interesting. Strand, Larson, hat-trick, Cunha, red card, would not mind. But doubt it, nothing on the Wolves-Leicester game. Hopefully Vardy winds him up. I wouldn't put it past them, but yeah, I think Cunha does start and doesn't get red carded this time. Paula says, no way Spurs are winning that. Yeah, even without the atmosphere, and I'll be honest, I think Liverpool have a good atmosphere, but if we're talking about the best in the country, I think there definitely have maybe a few other contenders. I think Palace have a quite underrated home crowd, to be fair. But you would say the English fans maybe pale in comparison to the German ones, like Dortmund, even Bayern. But yeah, I mean, everyone's got their own kind of opinions on a good atmosphere. Gone with Cliver and Livramento in place of Sessegnon and Murphy. I do like Cliver a lot this week. Livramento, not bad. I mean, I think Newcastle will keep a clean sheet. So, standard stuff there. Easy says Chelsea 2-1, Brighton 3-1, Newcastle 4-1, 2-1 Fulham. So you're not backing many clean sheets except for Wolves, which is interesting. Your Gameweek 35 and beyond plans, just a quick overview. I did talk about this in my team selection. And I didn't actually specifically highlight transfers that I'm going to make, just how my team looks like without making any moves. So just to go through that one more time very quickly, and I'll leave this more so to the future team selection videos. For Gameweek 35, I can have this sort of platform. Looks all right, but I'm not a big fan of the double up in the Arsenal defence against Bournemouth. But the rest of it looks fairly decent. I think Marmoush, Salah, Isak would be my standout captains. The bench is fairly decent, I think, as well, with Bruggen, Sarr, Mateta, and Livramento. For Gameweek 36, I can't really talk about this too much yet because we don't know exactly which teams will double in 36 and blank in 37, but the most likely will be Spurs, Villa, City, and Bournemouth in terms of doubling in 36. So I might pile up on those players a little bit, but then some of those teams will blank in 37. So that's a balancing act I need to think about. But yeah, I've already got a starting 11 for Blank Gameweek 37, but not of great quality because I've got a triple up of Arsenal facing a triple up of Newcastle as well. And then for Gameweek 38, which I haven't really thought about too much, yeah, it looks fairly decent. I definitely bench my Palace players here if possible. And I've also got the ability to make transfers. As you can see there, 4 transfers at my disposal, which I can use and spread between those blanks and doubles before the final Gameweek of the season. But yeah, doesn't look too bad. Maybe I'd captain Saka at that stage. If not, Salah, Isak, they're all good options. We'll wait and see. I don't want to think too much about Gameweek 38 when Blank Gameweek 34 is still yet to go underway. But that's kind of a brief overview of how my team looks like in future weeks. And in terms of transfer plans, a lot depends on who doubles in 36. And we'll find out this weekend. But that is pretty much it. Let me just show you my FPL Challenge team one more time before I wrap up. Alex says free is a massive differential on its own. Everyone on the free will gain rank by default. Yeah, of course, if you're in a really good rank, like especially top 10k, then yeah, achieving a green arrow will be more difficult. But I don't know. I'm interested to see the kind of numbers flying around with the free hit. John Walker says gone with double Wolves defense. Iwobi, Neto, JSL. Time for a differential week. All the best of that. Just the Parker says good point. Bugger everyone going Sessegnon, not Robinson. But some non-free hit might still have Robinson. Yeah, in general, Robinson is the more template pick, but with the, I don't know, people on Twitter, content creators and stuff, maybe Robinson is a bit more popular, but his ownership is still not that high overall. You have no Forest Brentford, they get double points. Yeah, I'm aware of that. Obviously, it's Nottingham Forest Brentford, that is the main focus this week. Just not really feeling it. But yeah, that was your challenge team, fair enough. Yeah, you did only mention a few players. I might go for 1 or 2 of them, like Chris Wood and then Boomer, but that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Maybe in Boomer to replace Barnes and then Chris Wood or Visser. That's pretty much it. I know this is early for next season, but what are Leeds and Burnley FPL picks next season? I'll talk more about this in the summer. I think that's the best thing to do. I mean, one of the kind of standouts on paper would be Trafford or just going for a Burnley defender. I don't think they'll replicate their defensive numbers and the clean sheets in the Premier League, though. Yeah, Dara, I have heard Szoboszlai mentioned a few times, and people saying, why are you going for Diaz instead? But yeah, Szoboszlai a bit more nailed on, and he's got the bonus points potential. Southampton are playing more expressively without the burden of staying in the Premier League since the last 2 games and scoring. Well, I've gone for 3-1 Fulham. I think Southampton could score, but Sessegnon is there as a punt for the attacking threat. Thank you, Manu. Have a great weekend as well. What is up with FPL? I used my wildcard and it wiped my free transfer. FPL team today said free hit wipes my free transfer. Rule says this should not happen. Yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, the rules do clearly state that you keep the transfers from before. And even when you use other websites like fpl.team, for example, I was actually trying it out. So if I activate the free in 35 and rolled this week and had 2 free transfers for 35 and then used the free hit, I would still have 2 free transfers for 36. So I'm not sure exactly what's gone on there. Mohammed says Chelsea 2, Everton 1. I wouldn't mind that. Palmer brace, Everton score. Yeah. Richard says, thanks for the stream, mate. Best of luck with your free hit team this week. Likewise with your squad, Richard. Should be a good one. Let me know your forecast for River versus Boca. I haven't been following both teams that much this season. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly I'm never really interested in this Classico because I dislike both teams equally, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, River Plate, a lot of draws in there. So Boca are top of their league, and I think River Plate and they're 7th. Okay, so Boca are actually doing better. I wasn't aware. I didn't know they were doing that well. I mean, my kind of hope is a draw, and then Central can close the gap. As my team, Central are second in the table right now after a very good start. Obviously, won the league very recently, but or the Copa de Liga. I'd say a draw. Let's go for a draw and hope for the best there. I went for Cunha captain, considering Salah's dip in form and Barnes' minutes risk, and Isak's dip. Is that a good shout? Yeah, it is a shout. I mean, Cunha's third in my captaincy list, but I do think Salah has dipped in form. I don't think that needs to be quoted. Isak, yeah, he's also dipped, but not to the same level as Salah. But both of them should do very well this week, in my opinion. And with Cunha, the main concern is, will he start or not? And I think he does. Vissa captain for challenge, yeah, he is being considered for sure. I might end up doing that. So for now, it's not locked in. I'm going to go from Boomer. And yeah, either Vissa or Chris Wood. But I can't help but still want Isak. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, I'm going to stick with this for now. But the likes of Mbumo and Chris Wood, very good options, but they don't have the best of records against their upcoming opponent. Of course, they are clashing with each other. Good luck, Maria, as well, with your team. Enjoy it, if you can. I didn't make a transfer before the chips earlier. Yeah, I'm not sure, Twisted Parky. I honestly have no idea why that would be the case. Free wiped my transfer 2 last week. It's good to know, though. In my case, doesn't really affect me at all, because I only one free transfer going into this week. But yeah, that is quite strange, actually, based on the rules and what we covered earlier this season. Yeah, I haven't covered that as well, Adil. I haven't talked about it. I mean, I don't like either team. I think both of them have had their fair share of scandals and referee favoritism, but Real Madrid have this thing where they put pressure on the referee, and I don't like it whatsoever. I don't really have like a preference of who wins that Copa del Rey final, but yeah, I mean, what Madrid are doing is quite disgusting. I mean, I personally have been very vocal about refs, and they definitely deserve more criticism and also more accountability. But to put pressure on a referee before a final and then accusing them of bias and stuff like that, that's not what I don't like, that sort of thing. And if they had that sort of feeling and felt that he was biased, they could go about it in a better way. It just seems like a crybaby sort of thing to do. Thanks, mate. Good luck this week. Likewise, if Inter, PSG or Arsenal win UCL, who wins the Ballon d'Or? Well, that's a good question. I mean, if Arsenal win the Champions League, which is obviously the only thing I care about, I don't think he'd win it, but I think Rice would become like a front runner, especially for his performances this year, in this calendar year. Then you'd be looking at the defenders and stuff like that. But Inter, you're looking at Lautaro Martinez, Sommer as a nomination, but goalkeepers are not going to win it realistically. Bastoni could be top 10. Then you're looking at Kalinoglu in the midfield, potentially. But a lot of these teams are kind of like strong teams. They don't have standout players. They don't have superstars, so to speak. PSG, Ousmane Dembele would be a front runner. Hakimi, yeah, he would be up there, but once again, I don't see a defender winning it. But yeah, if Barcelona win it, I think that becomes a bit simpler. Rafinha ends up winning the Ballon d'Or, and you've got the likes of Pedri and Lewandowski also in the top 5. But with the other teams, it becomes a bit more difficult. But I could still see Rafinha, for example, winning the Ballon d'Or if one of those teams you mentioned end up lifting the Champions League. Have Brentford made the worst possible strides since being promoted, or would that be Fulham? Oh, that's a good question. You'd arguably say Brentford, because with Fulham, they've kind of been an established Premier League entity for years. They sometimes go to the Championship, but then go back up immediately. But with Brentford, they're kind of like a fresh team, you know, someone no one expected, and they've adapted very well. Your feelings of Arsenal's win over Madrid? Well, obviously very proud and obviously very pleased about the results and the performances. I was still a bit nervous in the second game, especially after Saka missed a penalty, and Saliba's mistake, which he also did against Crystal Palace, is something he has to cut out of his game. But Arsenal thoroughly deserved to win both matches, and yeah, they, put out a statement, I'd say. Now, it also goes to show what Arsenal could have done in the Premier League this season and in other cup competitions if they signed a top quality striker in the summer or in January. And I felt there have been many missed opportunities from Arsenal in general in the recent transfer windows. So hopefully they can address that this summer and then go on to win the league next season. Mohamed goes with his predictions as well. 2-1 Chelsea, 2-2 West Ham versus Brighton. Newcastle win 4-0. 3-0 to Fulham, I'm guessing. Yeah, just to let you know, Southampton are facing Fulham and then Wolves are facing Leicester. Probably just a typo there. I think you probably addressed that in the other comments. So you've gone for 3-0 Wolves, 3-0 Fulham, 2-1 Bournemouth, 2-1 Liverpool, and 1-1 Forest Brentford. I hope Arsenal 3-0 and Barca 2-1. Oh, so do I. My dream final was Arsenal-Barcelona and for Arsenal to get revenge. Punjabi says, Dylan, Tottenham, Bournemouth, Man City and Villa. Chance of doubling in 36 is because Tottenham and Bournemouth play City and Villa in 37, as City and Villa might be in the FA Cup final. Yeah, now, in general, the most likely teams are Villa, Tottenham anyway, because Tottenham have reached the Europa League semi-final, and if Villa reach the FA Cup final, that is almost certainly going to be a double in 36. And then, as you mentioned, the finalists of the FA Cup, which are currently projected to be Bournemouth and Man City. Sorry, Bournemouth and Man City, no. Bournemouth would double anyway. Obviously, City knocked them out in the quarterfinal stage, but City are projected to reach the final, and then they would double in 36 against Bournemouth. That is currently how things are looking to go about, but things can definitely change this weekend, and once we get those results in the FA Cup semi-finals and we have a clearer picture of Blank Gameweek 37 and Double Gameweek 36, that will all be addressed in this channel, or on this channel. One PSG knocked out, although I do prefer this PSG squad to the past. Yeah, and if Arsenal weren't playing PSG, I don't know. I mean, I don't like oil clubs necessarily. Clubs that have, basically had this massive push like Chelsea and Man City because of oil money, but that's how football has gone in the past 20 years. Their team is more likable, you could say. They play some great football, and their manager obviously is a top coach, but yeah, I really hope Arsenal can, get the job done. I think that Rafinha wins the Ballon d'Or now, that Salah and Kane are out of the running. And also in the Champions League, Kane's done well, Salah not so much, and Rafinha's been brilliant in the Champions League. I mean, yeah, at the moment I think Rafinha is the number one pick. Any thoughts on the Clasico game today? Barcelona are the better team on paper, and I think they are the favourites, but Real Madrid do have more Copa del Reys. They've also got more... they have actually beaten them in the last Copa del Rey final, which was a Clasico. Obviously, the Gareth Bale won the goal, the solo goal. Is Jose Sá going to play? Yes, I believe so. He is back in training, and he is no longer flagged. Forest, Fulham, Bournemouth all stayed up in 2022, 23. No one since. Yeah, ever since that, we've had poor, newly promoted teams, and hopefully we get something a bit different next time. Thank you, Adil, and have a good week. Kind of don't like all clubs, but dislike big mouth American owners more. Well, yeah, and obviously Chelsea currently have an American owner. I don't like American owners in general. I think Liverpool fans would say the same about FSG, and obviously Arsenal with the Cronkies. And yeah, there's a lot of different examples there with the Glazers at Man United. I'm not sure, Easy, but it can go one of two ways, where the referee has a lot of pressure on him and, he makes stupid calls because of it, or, I don't know, maybe he's extra careful and he gets things spot on, but it's a difficult job with referees. I've never, said otherwise, but sometimes they don't make things easy for themselves. But in this case, I think Madrid have just put unnecessary pressure on the referee and also just taken this final in a direction which no one really wants to see. Just play the game, win the game of football, and you can win a Copa del Rey, and that's about it. But it also goes to show that Real Madrid aren't that confident of winning this game because of how things have gone for them this season. But thank you, everyone. It has been a blast talking to you for the past 2 hours and 44 minutes. So if you have also, enjoyed this content with the FPL challenge coverage, FPL with the free activated, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell to notice soon we'll upload a live stream for both FPL and UCL Fantasy, which will return over this weekend. And there will be a deadline stream on Tuesday for Matchday 15, the first leg of the Champions League semi-finals. So the plan is to record and upload a best team video very soon. So by Monday, expect that to be published. The same goes for my team selection, where I've got no chips left in UCL Fantasy. I recently used the wildcard, and now with 5 free transfers, I can easily get to my ideal 50-man squad but Robert Lewandowski is going to miss that first leg and potentially the second game as well. So we have to be a bit, well, I'd say creative. Not really. We're kind of down to the bare bones in that forward line, which is something we saw last season as well, albeit we still had Vinicius, Mbappe and Fulkrug at that time, and maybe Rodrigo as well. This time round, you're kind of limited to the same options, which I'll talk about in those videos. But things are more interesting in the midfield and defensive line, I'd say. And of course, only 4 goalkeepers to choose from. But yeah, I think the defensive midfield is where the majority of the points and swings will happen in that fantasy format. Check all the other links as well for my X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, the Discord server, FPL, FPL Challenge Leagues, Spotify, and much more. And for the UCL Fantasy videos, you can check out my UCL Fantasy League. It is the biggest mini league in the world as well. And let's see what else people are saying. Who do you want to win in the cup? Don't really have a preference, but I guess a new winner, basically. Someone new, someone refreshing. I don't know. I wouldn't mind Bournemouth. Sorry, I keep saying Bournemouth. They're out of the competition. What is wrong with me? I'd probably say Forest or Villa. I actually don't mind Villa. It's just some of their fans, you know, stupid online talk. They'd just be like, oh, look, Emery won an FA Cup and all that stuff. Not that I really care. So if I had a preference, yeah, probably Forest or Villa. Then Palace and then City. That's my order of preference, but I think City will end up winning it. I want Palace out and Forest because they knocked us out. I get that. And Forest fans were giving it large. But that's kind of natural, isn't it? If it wasn't for that, you probably wouldn't mind them winning it. But I get your point. With Palace as well and Arsenal, I really don't care about Palace. I mean, they're a London rival, so to speak, but they're not really a rival. If Leeds or Burnley manage to stave off relegation, which Premier League club has the strongest will go down? Ooh. Well, Wolves could be in a turbulent situation next season without Cunha. Vitor Pereira has a pretty bad track record of things going a bit sour from what I've seen. So I wouldn't be surprised if Wolves are down there. But yeah, apart from that, who else are we looking at? I mean, things can change so quickly. I mean, Forest went from 17th to 3rd in the Premier League. But yeah, I think Wolves would spring to mind. Yeah, West Ham have a chance, true. I agree. Yeah, probably same order for FA Cup preference. Villa, Forest, City and Palace. Yeah, that's fair enough. Honestly, I don't really care who wins it. But City have a decent number of FA Cups and trophies. And yeah, obviously if they get 3rd and a trophy, I mean, that's a better season than most in the Premier League, to be honest. I think Leeds and Burnley both struggle. Same here. And whoever ends up being promoted as well, like Sheffield United, who obviously have a decent record this season in the Championship, but it's all about those playoffs now. It's okay to have an amazing defence in the Championship, but won't happen in the Prem. Yeah, I don't think Burnley will replicate that. Maybe they'll concede fewer than Leeds and the other promoted team, absolutely, and that can give them a chance of staying up, but they won't be able to replicate those numbers at all. Manager of the season, Nuno. Yeah, him on a slot. If we're talking about Premier League only, then yeah, those two spring to mind. I mean, Iraola was getting shouts recently, but there was obviously a big drop-off for the last 2 months. Yeah, it's going to be one of those two, and I think Nuno is a worthy winner. Leeds are a big club and have the funds. They need to get the transfer spend correct. Yeah, and of course, the last time they were here, they had a great style of play, a good manager in Bielsa, who is a bit overrated, but he obviously builds very entertaining teams. Burnley not enough going forward, I agree, but maybe they add in the transfer window. And all of this will be discussed in the summer when discussing Burnley, Leeds, newly promoted assets. And yeah, we can also talk about the more appealing assets from those kind of more secure teams as well. Leeds still very attacking, will probably get found out in the Prem. Yeah, a team to target for the captaincy, but maybe they can cause some problems for certain defenses as well. It'll be interesting to see how things pan out, and hopefully next season is more interesting with the, the relegation battle and also the title race. But one saving grace of this season is probably the battle for top 5, you could say. But even then, it's not something that massively excites me. But then again, everyone is different. Thank everyone for tuning in. It has been a blast talking to every single one of you. If you haven't already, you know the drill. Like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit the notification bell. And if you want to see a reaction stream, let me know your thoughts there in the live chat and the comments section. And I will see you potentially later today for a reaction stream. And then the plan is to focus completely on UCL Fantasy with the best team, my own team selection, and a deadline stream on Tuesday. Be sure not to miss it. Take care, enjoy the football, and I'll see you very soon.